Atop a cliff beneath the full moon, a man praises Jin Sowoon's unmatched memory. Badly wounded, Jin Sowoon says everything was only possible because of the other man. The mysterious figure, Zhang Sanfeng, leader of the Muram Alliance, reveals that all of the Alliance's records have finally been restored and coldly thanks him for his service. Kneeling and bleeding, Jin Sowoon says he only followed Zhang Sanfeng's orders and angrily asks if this is the reward for all his dedication. Zhang Sanfeng draws his sword, explaining that someone with such an extraordinary memory would be too dangerous if they ever sided with the demonic cult. For the Alliance's justice and safety, both Jin Sowoon and his memories must disappear. Jin Sowoon responds with a sarcastic laugh, questioning what threat he could possibly pose to an alliance that has already been defeated by the cult and is barely surviving. Zhang Sanfeng firmly declares that the alliance will still defeat the enemy and rise again. Jin Sowoon scoffs, reminding him that the alliance leaders fled north while sacrificing countless innocent people as shield. Watching them eliminate others in the name of justice, he says, made it impossible to distinguish the alliance from the cult itself. Zhang Sanfeng is visibly shaken by those words. Walking to the edge of the cliff, Jin Sowoon bitterly regrets entrusting his life to such people. Raising his blood-stained hand, he decides to make one final choice for himself. With a faint smile, he throws himself into the abyss, determined to take responsibility for his own end. As he falls into the darkness, he reflects on how his perfect memory turned his life into a living hell. He remembers the beginning of the Great War when he and his companions from the Teal sect were recruited. Faced with the enemy's overwhelming strength, the alliance leaders fled and used weaker warriors as disposable shield. To save his fellow disciples, he accepted the task of memorizing every record of the alliance. As his life fades, he regrets spending his time buried in books instead of training his martial arts. He curses the heavens for giving him a perfect memory instead of strength or internal energy. Just before death, the bracelet on his bloodied wrist begins to glow. With his final breath, he wishes only for the strength to protect everyone he cares about. Suddenly, angry voices call out, asking if Jin Sowoon has already passed out and mocking him for being weaker than his own disciple. Someone pokes his head with a wooden sword. Feeling the pain, he grips his weapon and curses his memory for forcing him to remember even physical suffering. As the pain overwhelms him, he lets out a desperate scream, realizing his flawless memory recalls every sensation as well. When he opens his eyes, he finds several young disciples in uniform standing around him. Looking around in disbelief, he recognizes the place immediately. He is lying in the training yard of the Teal sect exactly as it was in the past. Two disciples stare at him with surprise and concern. As the truth sinks in, Jin Sowoon's heart races. Without hesitation, he runs toward the companions he believed he had lost forever. Overcome with emotion, he throws his arms around Hong and Jum Pyo, hugging them tightly. Hong blushes in embarrassment and asks what her senior is doing, while Jum Pyo, equally confused, wonders if something is wrong. The surrounding disciples begin whispering, convinced their senior has either eaten something strange or lost his mind. Jin Sowoon cries with relief at seeing them all alive. Believing this is nothing more than a final illusion before death, he smiles warmly and thanks his memory for allowing him to see their faces one last time. Neither Hong nor Jum Pyo understands his emotional reaction. Jin Sowoon pinches Hong's cheeks, saying she was adorable as a child and admitting he even missed her constant lectures. Then he gives Jum Pyo a squeeze and jokingly brings up the time he used to wet the bed, leaving the boy completely embarrassed. A harsh voice interrupts the moment, asking if Jin Sowoon is pretending to be crazy because he's afraid of their duel. The young man demands he pick up his sword, threatening to target the other disciples if he refuses. Seeing his opponent, Jin Sowoon thinks that even his final illusion could have spared him this man's presence. It is Yi Chil-young, the spoiled son of a wealthy merchant family who uses duels as an excuse to bully the sect's disciples. Jin Sowoon accepts the challenge without hesitation. Remembering how everyone endured the abuse in silence to avoid losing the sect's sponsorship, he decides to use this supposed final illusion to finally get revenge on his longtime rival. His confident smile and mocking attitude infuriate Yi Chil-young, who charges forward at full speed with a wooden sword. Jin Sowoon calmly watches every movement, recalling the sword technique that had defeated him in the past. It is a secret sword art taught by a famous wandering swordsman hired by Yi Chil-young's family. He remembers that his rival always aims for the eyes. Back then, he understood the technique but lacked the strength to respond. Now, after facing the terrifying warriors of the demonic cult, those attacks seem painfully slow. Yi Chil-young is stunned when his fastest strike is effortlessly avoided. Compared to the countless deadly techniques Jin Sowoon was forced to memorize during the war, this is nothing. Jin Sowoon immediately counters with a legendary sword technique he memorized in the future. As his opponent rushes in, every movement of the technique becomes perfectly clear in his mind. His eyes sharpen as he executes it with flawless precision. With a single smooth strike, he delivers a devastating blow that crashes into Yi Chil-young's head. The bully spits out blood, shocked to see such a legendary technique being used against him. He collapses in agony while Jin Sowoon smiles in satisfaction, finally defeating the man who had tormented him with his own sword style. The impact leaves everyone speechless. Unable to believe the speed of the counterattack, Yi Chil-young staggers, using his sword to support himself as he groans in pain. His classmates are stunned that someone actually cracked the head of the powerful Merchant Association's son. Covered in blood and humiliation, Yi Chil-young screams that this isn't over and struggles to stand, vowing to make Jin Sowoon pay. Before he can move another step, he collapses unconscious in front of him. One of the young female disciples watches in stunned silence. The younger disciples quickly begin celebrating, admitting they had always thought their senior was timid and weak. Seeing the smiles on the children of his beloved sect fills Jin Sowoon with satisfaction. Believing this is still his final illusion, he thanks the heavens for giving him the chance to defeat his old rival before passing on peacefully. Just as he begins to relax, a powerful punch lands square on his face. Hong glares at him and angrily asks if he has completely lost his mind. She demands to know what they'll do if the influential Merchant Association cuts off the sect's vital sponsorship because of his actions. As his cheek throbs with pain, Jin Sowoon realizes everything feels far too real to be an illusion. He cries out in shock as the truth finally dawns on him. This is not a final memory before death. Seeing his reaction, Hong gives him a faint sarcastic smile before punching him again. She tells him to stop talking nonsense and take responsibility for what he has done. The second blow knocks Jin Sowoon onto his back, leaving him completely dazed. While the others try to wake him, Jin Sowoon finally accepts the unbelievable truth that he has truly returned to the path. Later, he wakes in the sect's infirmary, surrounded by rows of medicine drawers. Bandages cover his face after Hong's punches, and he uses the quiet moment to organize his thoughts and understand how he traveled through time. He recalls that, in his original timeline, everything began with the resurgence of the demonic cult. The Alliance was defeated in the war, and his sect was pushed to the brink of destruction. During those desperate times, his extraordinary memory became their only hope. He was entrusted with memorizing and restoring every sacred text of the Murim Alliance. He devoted himself completely, determined to remember every word and character without a single mistake. In return, he asked for only one thing: that the young disciples be spared from the battlefield. Yet, after everything he accomplished, the Alliance decided his memories were too dangerous and tried to kill him. He was certain he had died after falling from the cliff, but instead he awakened years in the past. He soon realizes that every legendary martial art he memorized remains perfectly intact in his mind. Those techniques already allowed him to change his fate by defeating an opponent he could never have beaten in his previous life. Looking at his wrist, he notices that only the dragon bracelet returned with him. It was a trophy from one of his few victories against the demonic cult in the future. As he studies the bracelet, angry shouting erupts outside. Curious, Jin Sowoon gets out of bed and heads toward the sect's outer courtyard. A wealthy, overweight merchant is furiously demanding to know who injured his son's head. He threatens to cut off the sect's financial support starting that very month. On the other side of the door, the sect leader repeatedly apologizes, trying to calm him down. The furious man is Yi Yang-sik, Yi Chil-young's father. He continues insulting the sect leader, calling him nothing more than a country bumpkin while blaming him for failing to discipline his disciple. Listening from inside, Jin Sowoon remembers how every one of his companions eventually died tragic deaths in the war. Their suffering and sacrifices remain vividly etched into his memory. Having been given a second chance, he vows not to let history repeat itself. Remembering his own death, he swears this time everything will be different. Determined, he bites through the wooden stick in his mouth that was helping him endure the pain. After stretching, he prepares to deal with the arrogant merchant himself. Holding a mysterious object in his hand, he already knows exactly how to turn the situation around. With a calm, calculating gaze, he decides the time has come to make his move. Outside, the sect leader thanks the merchant for his supposed generosity. As Yi Yang-sik turns to leave, he smugly says he's only letting the matter go out of pure generosity. At that moment, a calm voice calls from the rooftop, saying he heard someone was looking for him. Jin Sowoon mockingly introduces himself as the insignificant country bumpkin and smiles at the wealthy merchant. Yi Yang-sik and his guards stare up in shock at the young man standing so boldly on the roof. Jin Sowoon jumps down gracefully, landing directly in front of them. The merchant immediately recognizes him and flies into a rage. rage. Jin Sowoon lets out a disdainful sigh and asks why someone who is barely older than him feels entitled to insult him. The wealthy merchant is stunned by the young disciple's disrespect and bold attitude. Jin Sowoon calmly remarks that it's ridiculous to make such a scene over a head injury sustained during an official duel. The merchant angrily insists his son was the victim of a dirty trick and claims the entire sect should be grateful to serve him. Jin Sowoon reminds him that several disciples had been bedridden for days after being beaten by his son. In a cold tone, he adds that the merchant is the one living in a fantasy if he believes his incompetent son will ever enter the academy. The merchant trembles with rage as his subordinate hurriedly tries to calm him down. Pointing furiously at Jin Sowoon, he demands to know whether the boy can bear the consequences if the sect loses its sponsorship. Faced with the threat, Jin Sowoon simply smiles. The merchant boasts that the sect is already bankrupt and will be starving without his financial support. Once a respected sect, it has lost its former glory and now survives only on its old reputation. Even so, it still possesses the exclusive right to recommend one disciple to the academy without requiring an entrance exam. That privilege is exactly why the merchant paid a fortune to enroll his son in the sect. Jin Sowoon calmly walks toward him and tells him to cut the sponsorship if he wishes. He promises to take full responsibility but says he's curious about one thing. Gripping the merchant's arm, he reminds him that the academy's special selection is less than a year away. Smiling, he asks whether his son was rejected by every other major sect because he lacked talent. The merchant breaks into a cold sweat, unable to deny the truth. His hands shake with anger as he demands if the insolent boy even knows who he's speaking to. He shouts that the Murim Alliance has already abandoned the sect and that he alone is its only hope. Jin Sowoon looks at him with quiet disdain. Having witnessed the merchant's schemes in his previous life, he leans in and whispers that it is actually the sect that is preserving his family's reputation. The merchant's eyes widen as he realizes Jin Sowoon knows his greatest weakness. Before he can respond, Jin Sowoon simply turns and walks away. Left trembling and speechless, the merchant finally realizes he has lost control of the situation. He angrily calls Jin Sowoon insolent, but his own guard steps in to stop him. As he walks away, Jin Sowoon reflects that this unwavering resolve was forged through his own death. A moment later, he realizes he acted on instinct and still hasn't planned his next moves in detail. As the sun sets behind the mountains, he heads toward a hidden cave marked by glowing roots, knowing exactly what lies inside. His only goal now is to become far stronger. He knows the sect's basic martial arts will never be enough. To change his future, he must obtain the legendary 10,000-year fire herb, a treasure capable of granting an enormous amount of pure internal energy. Thanks to the Murim Alliance's secret records, he remembers the exact location of every rare herb. Inside the cave, however, he discovers a monstrous guardian far more terrifying than the ancient records describe. Realizing a direct fight would be reckless, Jin Sowoon initially prepares to strike with his wooden sword but immediately abandons the idea, knowing his current strength is insufficient. Instead, he lights a makeshift torch. Smiling to himself, he remembers that intelligence can be deadlier than any sword. The books had taught him that a skilled warrior uses the environment as a weapon whenever possible. The multi-eyed monster panics as flames spread rapidly around it, cutting off every escape route. Jin Sowoon watches the creature burn, convinced that victory belongs to whoever uses the most effective method, not the most honorable one. After defeating the beast, Jin Sowoon clenches his fist and quietly gives thanks for overcoming the first major obstacle. He celebrates, knowing this is the first step toward surpassing the corrupt leaders of the Murim Alliance. The monstrous creature lies dead on the cave floor with a stake driven through its head. At the center of the cave, a natural stone pedestal holds the rare treasure he came to obtain. Bathed in a faint beam of light, he approaches the altar and consumes the legendary fire herb, expecting its immense internal energy to transform him instantly. Instead, he cries out in frustration when the result falls far short of his expectations. Even after eating the entire herb, roots included, his body cannot absorb all of its divine energy. He bitterly blames the sect's outdated cultivation techniques and even wonders if he is the real problem. Slamming his fist against the stone floor, he struggles to hide his disappointment. He realizes that if he continues progressing this slowly, he will never prevent the tragedies awaiting the future. Alone in the cave, he thinks of the brutal war that claimed the lives of everyone he cared about. He swears that this time he will stop the younger disciples from being sacrificed as cannon fodder. To change their fate, he knows he must rise through the ranks of the Murim alliance and gain influence before the war begins. Clenching his fists, he reminds himself that he has only 1 year to pass the prestigious academy's entrance exam. Looking ahead with determination, he knows failure is not an option. As he calms himself by listening to the dripping water inside the cave, he searches for another way to grow stronger. Staring at his reflection, inspiration suddenly strikes. He remembers the existence of powerful spiritual pills. His thoughts turn to his former rival, whose father had spent an enormous fortune to purchase the rare Sealma pill from Mount Hua. Before the boy could consume it, however, the pill mysteriously vanished and the thief was never identified. Since that theft has not yet happened, Jin Sowoon realizes he has a unique opportunity. Confident in his memory and reasoning, he recalls that every criminal leaves traces behind. He begins searching through the countless reports stored in his mind, reviewing the Murim Alliance's records of movements throughout the region. One by one, he connects mission reports, patrol records, and suspicious entry and exit logs from that period. Patiently comparing every detail, he cross-references local incidents near the Merchant Association until the scattered clues begin to fit together. At last, the entire puzzle falls into place, revealing exactly where the Sealma pill will be kept. 3 legendary warriors emerge in his memories as the prime suspects behind the theft that would occur in the future. Jin Sowoon clasps his hands, grateful that his extraordinary memory is finally becoming a true advantage instead of a burden. He decides to steal the Sealma pill before the original thief can take it and use its power for himself. Just then, the dragon bracelet on his wrist suddenly begins glowing with an intense, mysterious light. Startled, Jin Sowoon turns toward the corpse of the defeated spider, realizing something unusual is happening. The bracelet continues to shine without stopping, unlike anything he has ever seen before. Thick black smoke suddenly pours from the dragon bracelet, startling Jin Sowoon. Claws of dark energy reach toward the dead monster, tearing its spiritual essence from its chest. The mysterious power wraps around the glowing red core, draining its energy before channeling it into the bracelet. Jin Sowoon watches in shock as the bracelet absorbs and purifies the spider's core. Outside, the morning remains peaceful as birds soar across the clear sky. Sitting inside the cave, Jin Sowoon meditates while the purified crimson energy flows into his body. He feels the immense spiritual power circulate smoothly through his energy channel. When he opens his eyes, they glow with a brilliant blue light, confirming the process has succeeded. He bursts into laughter as he realizes the incredible increase in his strength. He remembers that the bracelet once belonged to the blood-sucking demon he defeated in the future. He had kept it only as a war trophy, never knowing it possessed the ability to absorb soul. To test his newfound power, he throws a simple punch into the air. The strike unleashes a powerful shockwave that shatters nearby rocks and shakes the entire cave. The purified energy from the monster has merged perfectly with his cultivation technique, multiplying his strength. Smiling with satisfaction, he thanks the heavens for finally giving him the power to begin changing the future. Meanwhile, the Merchant Association hosts a lavish celebration illuminated by red lanterns to honor the expensive spiritual pill they recently acquired. Yi Chil-young proudly displays the rare pill, boasting that it will raise his internal energy to extraordinary levels. As he continues showing it off, Hong watches from the courtyard with little interest. Resting her chin on her hand, Hong quietly worries about Jin Sowoon's sudden disappearance. She remembers how, in the original timeline, he accepted all the blame and was ultimately forced to leave the sect because of the merchant's pressure. She also recalls Yi Chil-young publicly mocking him as a coward in front of everyone. Her thoughts are interrupted when one of the younger disciples happily runs over carrying a plate of roasted meat. Soon the other children gather around her, filling the courtyard with laughter while Yi Chil-young watches from a distance with open contempt. Muttering to himself, he vows to teach the troublesome children a lesson once the banquet is over. Hong thanks the children for bringing her food. One of the girls teasingly asks if she's thinking about her missing senior again. The younger disciples laugh, saying she always becomes quiet whenever Jin Sowoon is on her mind, leaving her blushing in embarrassment. The boys suggest saving some rice cakes and meat for him since he hasn't eaten dinner yet. Their loyalty makes Hong smile with pride. Trying to hide her emotions, she lets out an exaggerated burp, shocking all the children. Laughing, she threatens to eat all their food if they keep teasing her. The boys immediately begin stuffing themselves as fast as they can, turning the moment into a playful scene. As the laughter continues, Hong quietly wonders where Jin Sowoon is and what he is doing. Beneath the warm glow of the sunset and hanging lanterns, she affectionately thinks of him as an idiot. Night soon falls over the luxurious Merchant Association mansion, now illuminated by dozens of festive lanterns. Yi Chil-young's father raises a toast before the gathered guests, celebrating his family's achievement. Yi Chil-young drinks and laughs with his friends, completely absorbed in the luxury and his sense of triumph. Elegant dancers perform in the center of the grand hall, their pink ribbons flowing gracefully through the air. While the celebration continues inside, several mysterious figures move swiftly and silently across the mansion's dark rooftop. Suddenly, a masked intruder leaps from the rooftop with remarkable speed and agility. Using flawless movement techniques, he glides through the air and slips past the guards unnoticed. Laughing quietly behind his mask, he mocks the Merchant Association's weak security. The thief is Ju Jang Muk. Holding the case containing the Mount Hua pill, he eagerly opens it to admire the mystical elixir glowing inside. Trembling with excitement, he celebrates obtaining the legendary treasure and imagines the power it will soon grant him. Hidden among the bushes, Jin Sowoon silently watches everything unfold. Just as Ju Jang Muk prepares to leave, a deadly sword strike suddenly cuts him down. The attack is so swift that he collapses to the forest floor in a single blow. A cold hand reaches down, picks up the red case and offers a mocking apology to the fallen thief. The new attacker smiles while holding the valuable prize, sarcastically repeating that he also needs its power to accomplish his own goals. Several days earlier, Jin Sowoon had already anticipated this outcome. To prepare, he visited a hunting shop in search of special equipment. Entering the rustic store, he explained that he had heard the owner sold rare and dangerous hunting gear. Without hesitation, he asked whether he had traps capable of capturing people. The hunter found the request unusual but smiled, claiming he carried the finest traps in the region, powerful enough to catch anything from rabbits to bears. Jin Sowoon placed a heavy pouch of coins on the counter and requested the strongest tiger traps available. He wanted an extremely sensitive mechanism capable of tearing off a bear's leg with ease. Smiling to himself, he remarked that such traps could send his target straight to the afterlife. The experienced hunter felt an uneasy chill but accepted the deal. Back in the present, the second assailant admires the red case, unaware of the danger watching from the darkness. He mocks Ju Jang Muk, saying he expected a more difficult fight against someone so well known in Jianghu. Confident that the legendary pill is finally his, he grins greedily. Moments later, calm footsteps approach as one of his sect companions arrives to congratulate him. The two laugh together, boasting about how easily they tricked and eliminated the original thief. They casually discuss hiding the body so Ju Jang Muk will simply be reported missing. Before disposing of the corpse, they decide to admire the legendary pill. As they open the red case, a soft pink glow lights up their greedy faces. Neither of them notices that a masked Jin Sowoon is standing silently behind them. The moment they sense someone breathing nearby, both men freeze. One swordsman instantly swings backward, but Jin Sowoon evades the strike with a quick leap and mocks his slow reflexes. When the swordsman looks again, Jin Sowoon is already holding the red case, leaving both thieves stunned that he stole it without them noticing. The leader furiously orders his companion to capture the masked intruder without mercy. The swordsman charges forward in a rage, shouting that Jin Sowoon will pay for stealing their prize. As he weaves effortlessly through the trees, Jin Sowoon sarcastically asks whether shamelessness is what their sect teaches. He reminds them that they were the ones who murdered someone and stole the case first. The pursuer launches a powerful aerial slash, trying to split him in half. Jin Sowoon smoothly slides beneath the attack, allowing the blade to strike only the ground and send dirt flying. Smiling beneath his mask, he calmly warns his opponent to watch his step. The next instant, the pursuing swordsman's boot lands on a hidden iron trap. It snaps shut with terrifying force, crushing through his flesh and bone. Jin Sowoon watches calmly, satisfied that his trap worked exactly as planned. The wounded warrior breaks into a cold sweat, struggling to suppress screams despite the unbearable pain. Moments later, a piercing cry echoes through the silent forest. Hearing the scream, the leader rushes over. Jin Sowoon casually remarks that they should have listened to his friendly warning. Furious, the remaining swordsman accuses him of being a coward for relying on such underhanded tactics. Pointing his blade, he demands that the masked intruder reveal his identity. Instead, Jin Sowoon crouches, picks up a small stone, and mockingly asks whether his enemy truly expects a formal introduction. He flicks the stone toward the ground beside the swordsman's feet. The impact triggers another hidden iron trap which slams shut with a violent snap. The swordsman freezes in terror, realizing he was only a single step away from losing his leg. Jin Sowoon calmly declares himself the rightful rightful owner of the mystical elixir, and warns that the two thieves will eventually end up in prison. He recalls how he uncovered their identities by cross-referencing countless Murim Alliance records. Searching through reports, he found warriors whose internal energy had mysteriously increased during the same period. From those records, he concluded that Zhu Jiangmuk had been killed and that two members of the Jiam Chong sect had divided the pill between themselves. The leader's expression changes as he realizes the masked man knows exactly who they are and what they have done. Jin Sowoon calmly confirms that he knows the identities of the two cowards from the famous Jiam Chong sect. The leader tries to intimidate him, asking whether he fears the revenge of the powerful Murim Alliance. Jin Sowoon scoffs, pointing out how absurd it is for one thief to threaten another while committing a crime. Despite his injury, the trapped swordsman lashes out with a powerful punch. The blow smashes into the ground with tremendous force, sending a shockwave across the area and launching several hidden traps into the air. Jin Sowoon quickly dodges the flying traps, silently cursing that he now has to avoid his own carefully placed devices. The wounded swordsman vows to tear off his mask and cut him into pieces, while the leader praises his companion's quick thinking. Without saying another word, Jin Sowoon suddenly retreats at full speed through the forest, making the pair believe he is trying to escape. The leader immediately orders the chase, but his companion warns that the path ahead is filled with traps. Confidently, the swordsman says they only need to step exactly where Jin Sowoon stepped. Praising the plan, the two carefully mimic his footprints as they race through the forest. The chase continues at full speed as they focus entirely on the trail, convinced they have figured out his escape route. The leader laughs, mocking the masked intruder and declaring that his plan has failed. At that moment, Jin Sowoon makes one final leap and lands lightly beside a tree. He calmly turns to face them, settling into a defensive stance with an amused look hidden beneath his mask. Believing they have cornered him, the two criminals charge together for the finishing blow. Jin Sowoon watches them silently, anticipating the final step of his trap. The moment both of their feet land exactly where he intended, the hidden trigger is activated. A cruel smile forms beneath Jin Sowoon's mask as he watches his enemies walk straight into his final trap. Several massive bear traps snap shut at once, crushing both swordsmen's legs with brutal force. The leader screams in terror as he realizes they have fallen into the carefully prepared trap. Both men collapse, bleeding heavily and unable to free themselves from the iron jaws. Jin Sowoon calmly draws his sword and remarks that they were slightly smarter than he expected. He explains that the only way to avoid the traps was to step in the exact same footprints without being off by even a single centimeter. The wounded swordsman stares at him in disbelief, insisting that such perfect precision is impossible. He demands to know how anyone could move so accurately through a forest filled with hidden traps. Jin Sowoon grips his sword and calmly answers that the secret lies in his perfect memory. It is the only divine gift he was given and the power that allows him to change fate. Under the moonlit sky, he delivers one final merciless strike, bringing an end to the two traitors. The following day, the Teal sect stands peacefully beneath a bright blue sky. Inside one of its buildings, a man calmly sips tea while discussing the sect's future. He is Jin Sowoon, the chief strategist of the Murim Alliance. As he recalls the Teal sect's history as one of the Alliance's traditional sect, Elder Namong Tiwan smiles knowingly and comments that stronger sects have begun rising throughout the region. The two conclude that it may be time to replace the weakened Teal sect with a more capable organization. Jin Sowoon asks whether the Iron Sword sect is the group seeking to expand its influence. The elder pours more tea and confirms that the rumors spreading through the Alliance are true. Jin points out that an official sect can only be removed if it commits a serious violation of Alliance law. With a calculating smile, Elder Namong claims there are rumors that the Teal sect has been selling its recommendation slots. Jin hesitates, questioning whether such an old and respected sect would really misuse its greatest privilege for profit. The elder insists they would abandon both honor and tradition out of greed, repeatedly claiming their desire for money outweighs their dignity. Outside, a small bird quietly perches on a nearby branch as evening settles over the large estate. Back inside, silence fills the room while the two men continue discussing their political plan. Pretending not to seek the sect's removal, Elder Namong claims he only wishes to protect the alliance's reputation. He reminds Jijil that these privileges were originally granted to honor sects that fought bravely in the past, and hypocritically says it pains him to see the alliance's name tarnished. Jijil silently raises his cup of tea, signaling his agreement with the discussion. Later that night, Jin Sowoon sits alone in the courtyard beneath the stars and begins cultivating. Closing his eyes, he focuses his mind as blue internal energy gathers around him. Brilliant blue currents spread across his back, revealing the release of immense spiritual power. Sweat runs down his face as he feels his energy channels fully expand. When he opens one glowing eye, he realizes his breakthrough has been completely successful. Remaining in the lotus position, he calmly regulates the overflowing energy surrounding him before clenching his fist in satisfaction. After continuously refining the mystical pill through meditation, his internal energy has already surpassed the greatest level he achieved in his previous life. Satisfied with his progress, Jin Sowoon quickly gets dressed and calmly walks down the wooden steps of the inn, ready for his next move. Entering the dining hall, Jin Sowoon finds the young inn helper asleep across a wooden table. The boy wakes with a start and sighs in relief, saying he had been worried after the young master disappeared for several days. Jin Sowoon simply asks for something to eat. The helper nervously explains that the kitchen has already closed for the night. Jin Sowoon smiles, places a generous stack of silver coins on the table, and the boy immediately rushes off to wake the cook. Watching him leave, Jin Sowoon quietly concludes that money can solve almost anything. He silently thanks the dragon bracelet for making those coins possible. He recalls hunting a giant tiger deep in the forest, where the bracelet proved useful not only against demons but also ordinary beasts. It drained the tiger's life force, converting it into pure internal energy, and he later sold the valuable pelt to a local hunter for a generous profit. Although pleased with how easily he earned money, he knows the bracelet's power is dangerous. Its ability resembles the techniques of the demonic cult, and if the Muram Alliance ever discovered he could absorb the essence of living creatures, the consequences would be severe. He vows to keep the bracelet's true power hidden to protect both himself and the TL sect. His thoughts are interrupted as the cheerful helper returns carrying several steaming dishes. Jin Sowoon eagerly begins eating while the two helpers watch with curiosity. The younger boy excitedly asks if he has heard the latest rumor spreading through Happy. He begins talking about the Merchant Association's grand banquet, which was held to celebrate the arrival of the legendary spiritual pill. The boy reveals that the pill was stolen during the celebration, causing Jin Sowoon to nearly choke on his noodles. The helper remarks that the thief must have been incredibly skilled and says the Muram Alliance has already dispatched investigators. Hearing that, Jin Sowoon chokes again. The startled boy quickly offers him water while he hurriedly asks whether the investigators found any clues. His heart sinks as he worries someone else may have been arrested because of him. Fortunately, the boy explains that the investigators quickly lost the trail and found nothing useful. Relieved, Jin Sowoon quietly thanks the heavens while pretending to sympathize with the merchant's loss. The helper then mentions another grand banquet that will soon take place in the region. Jin Sowoon freezes when he hears it will be hosted by the powerful Iron Sword sect. The boy explains that the sect leader is celebrating his 60th birthday with a magnificent 7-day banquet. The news brings back painful memories. Jin Sowoon remembers attending that same celebration in his previous life. He recalls the mocking smile of the Iron Sword sect's leader as his own father was forced to kneel before dozens of spectators and publicly apologize, destroying his family's dignity. That humiliation happened because of a single person's mistake. It was his own. Remembering how foolish and incompetent he had been, Jin Sowoon clenches his fist. Determined to change history, he swears that no member of the TL sect will attend that cursed birthday banquet, no matter the cost. He abruptly stands, thanks the helpers for the meal, and heads for the exit, leaving the young boy confused by his sudden departure. Ignoring the helpers' worried calls, Jin Sowoon walks away with unwavering resolve, determined that his father will never again suffer humiliation because of him. However, his plans are soon thrown into chaos when he finds himself caught in the middle of a deadly confrontation at the very banquet he intended to avoid. The attacks collide with tremendous force, sending sending sparks flying and making the surrounding air tremble. Jin Sowoon finds himself locked in a life-or-death duel against the grandson of the Iron Sword sect's leader. It all began a few days earlier. The young disciples of the Teal sect gather in the courtyard for training. Exhausted after a demanding session, they collapse onto the stone steps, rubbing their sore legs. The three Lee brothers, known for their strength and loyalty, struggle to catch their breath beneath the blazing sun. One of them complains about the relentless heat and wonders whether practicing the same strikes over and over will really improve their skills. The brothers laugh, remembering how they once admired Jin Sowoon's incredible swordsmanship. They admit they all respect their senior and begin wondering what he is doing now. The youngest brother grows worried, pointing out that Jin Sowoon has been missing for more than a week. They wonder if he is too ashamed to return after the trouble with the merchant's son, or if he has left the sect for good. Fearing retaliation from the merchant association, they still praise his kind heart. Their conversation is interrupted by noise from the front gate. The youngest disciple lights up with excitement as he spots a familiar figure entering the sect. Jin Sowoon returns to the Teal sect carrying a large sack filled with supplies and silver. Walking confidently through the gate, he remembers the humiliation his sect endured at the hands of wealthy rivals. Looking up at the sect's golden plaque, he silently vows to restore its former glory through his own effort. He also renews his determination that none of his companions will attend the Iron Sword sect's banquet, knowing the tragedy it led to in his previous life. As he considers how to prevent the trip, the younger disciples recognize him and rush over, shouting his name. The three Lee brothers eagerly surround him, overjoyed by his return and asking him to teach them the impressive techniques he recently displayed. Smiling warmly, Jin Sowoon ruffles their hair and jokingly asks whether they behaved while he was away. The happy reunion is suddenly interrupted by a commanding shout. Standing behind them is his father, Jin San, the leader of the outer hall, watching with his arms crossed and a stern expression. Seeing his father alive again overwhelms Jin Sowoon with emotion. Tears fill his eyes as he runs toward him, grateful for the chance to see him once more. Instead of embracing him, Jin San smacks him on the head and demands an explanation for the chaos he caused. He angrily reminds his son that the sect nearly went bankrupt because of the conflict with the merchant association. News of Jin Sowoon's return quickly reaches his recovered rival. Still furious, Yi Chil-young challenges him to another duel, insisting on a fair fight without trick. Jin Sowoon gives him a sly smile, realizing his opponent has walked straight into his psychological trap. Pretending to be overwhelmed, he dramatically praises Yi Chil-young's brilliance and claims he could never defeat someone empowered by such an extraordinary spiritual pill. The taunt enrages Yi Chil-young, who realizes Jin Sowoon somehow knows about the stolen elixir. Humiliated, he storms away in frustration. Hong immediately scolds Jin Sowoon for provoking someone whose precious pill had just been stolen. She and the others quietly remark that he has been acting strangely lately, while the younger disciples simply enjoy watching the exchange. Jin Sowoon then opens the large sack, revealing colorful sweets for the children. They excitedly rush toward the treats while Hong complains that he should have spent the money on rice instead. After the children settle down, Hong approaches him privately and asks him not to disappear again. She admits she has been worried, explaining that their rivals have been unusually active and asking him to stop carrying every burden alone. Blushing, she makes him promise never to vanish so suddenly again. Her sincere concern leaves Jin Sowoon speechless. Though he knows he has been carrying out his plans by choice rather than out of obligation, he quietly smiles and decides not to ruin the heartfelt moment. Jin Sowoon is startled to learn that the Teal sect is still planning to attend the Iron Sword sect's banquet. He laments that the decision has already been made, and refusing a formal invitation would be considered a serious insult. Knowing what awaits them, he desperately searches for a way to stop the trip. At that moment, his father walks into the courtyard, drawing everyone's attention. Jin San announces that he will attend the banquet alone to represent the sect and orders everyone else to remain behind. Jin Sowoon is puzzled by his father's sudden decision. Before he can ask why, one of the younger disciples timidly approaches, holding out a crumpled rice cake he had saved. Jin Sowoon and Hong immediately recognize it as the rice cake distributed at the rival sect's banquet. The boy shyly explains that he had been saving it so they could eat it together, but now he thinks he should throw it away. Touched by the child's sincerity, Jin Sowoon smiles warmly and accepts the simple gift. Without hesitation, he pops the entire rice cake into his mouth, leaving Hong staring at him him in disbelief. As he happily praises its taste, the little boy complains that he ate the whole thing himself. Laughing, Jin Sowoon apologizes and hands over all the expensive sweets he bought in exchange for the rice cake. The boy's eyes sparkle with excitement. Han grumbles that the rice cake was probably stale and hard, but Jin Sowoon simply smiles. He quietly realizes that avoiding this banquet will not solve anything. The rival sect will continue inviting them only to humiliate them again and again. Determined to end that cycle, he decides they can no longer keep running or silently enduring insults. He refuses to let his companions and the younger disciples continue suffering. With renewed resolve, Jin Sowoon declares that the Teal sect will attend the Iron Sword sect banquet after all. On the day of the celebration, a grand caravan of elegant carriages makes its way toward the Iron Sword sect. After arriving at the rival sect's vast courtyard, the members of the Teal sect walk together beneath the watchful eyes of the gathered guests. Jin Sowoon studies the imposing plaque hanging above the entrance. As they proceed, Master Kang Suk sternly warns him not to cause any trouble. Jin Sowoon jokingly asks whether his master came only to keep an eye on him. Kang Suk irritably reminds him that he insisted on joining the caravan at the last moment. Nearby, the merchant also warns his own son to behave himself and avoid starting another fight. Meanwhile, Jin San remains completely silent, walking with his arms crossed and a grim expression. Jin Sowoon notices with concern that his father has not spoken a single word since they decided to attend the banquet. Master Kang gives him another light knock on the head, complaining that he has become far too cheeky. Their conversation is interrupted when another group of warriors confidently approaches. A man dressed in green robes arrogantly orders the Teal sect to step aside and let his group pass first. The Teal sect's disciples are immediately angered by the blatant disrespect. Master Kang points at the man and accuses him of shamelessly cutting in line. One of the newcomers casually claims they only sent someone ahead because the others were tired. The group's leader is Guiyang, the head of the feared Chiangjik Association. The merchant and his son instantly turn pale upon recognizing the name. Watching silently, Jin Sowoon sees the merchant hurriedly step aside and repeatedly apologize to the powerful association. He quietly memorizes the name. In his previous life, Guiyang and Yi Chil-young became close allies at the academy. Together, they relentlessly bullied the disciples of weaker sects, treating them like servants. As they pass, the newcomers whisper among themselves, mocking the frightened merchant and ridiculing the humble uniforms of the Teal sect. Master Kang and Jin San endure the insults in silence, swallowing their pride rather than provoking a confrontation. Just then, Jin Sowoon steps forward and places a hand on the shoulders of the merchant and his son. Pretending he has never heard of the association, he mockingly asks its leader to repeat the group's name. Guiyang turns around with a furious expression. Frightened merchant immediately begins stammering, desperately trying to smooth over the situation before it gets any worse. Around them, the surrounding warriors whisper nervously, sensing the tension rising. Jin Sowoon bursts into laughter and says he probably saw the association's name written on a bathroom wall. The insult leaves the association members speechless. Consumed by anger, Guiyang grips the hilt of his sword, draws it in one swift motion and charges forward, shouting that he will cut the insolent boy in half. Before the blade can fall, the sound of calm footsteps interrupts the confrontation. A beautiful young woman arrives and Guiyang's sword stops only inches from Jin Sowoon, who remains perfectly calm. Recognized as Song, she immediately commands everyone's attention. With a cold voice, she asks why they are causing such a disturbance in her grandfather's sect and questions whether they came to celebrate a birthday or spill blood. The Iron Sword sect is one of the most influential and ruthless forces in the martial world, and its long-standing rivalry with the Teal sect centers on political influence and control of the same city. Their ultimate goal is to replace the Teal sect and seize its position among the great sect. Jin Sowoon remembers that, in his previous life, the Iron Sword sect leader's grandson humiliated him during the youth banquet and forced him into a duel. After that defeat, his father was forced to kneel before everyone and beg for forgiveness. This time, he is determined to prevent history from repeating itself. Back in the present, Song demands an explanation for the disturbance. Her cold gaze falls on the association's swordsman, who immediately lowers his weapon weapon, intimidated by her authority. He awkwardly blames Jin Sowoon for provoking him, but she cuts him off before he can continue. She firmly states that the Iron Sword sect does not tolerate guests cutting in line and orders him to return to the back. Then she formally introduces herself as Song and sincerely apologizes to everyone for the incident. To make up for the inconvenience, she offers to personally escort Teal sect inside. Following her, the group walks through the luxurious corridors of the Iron Sword sect. Along the way, Guiyang tries to flatter Song with exaggerated compliments about her beauty and elegance. She politely accepts the praise with a brief smile but remains focused on leading the guests. Jin Sowoon quietly watches her, puzzled. In his previous life, they had never crossed paths. Her unexpected kindness makes him suspect she has another motive. As they enter the main hall, Hong whispers in amazement at the enormous size and splendor of the Iron Sword sect. Jin Sowoon realizes such prosperity was no accident and decides to quietly observe everything. The grand banquet hall is filled with influential guests eating, drinking, and laughing. At the head of the hall, the feared leader Qin Wall and his sons celebrate proudly with the assembled guests. The merchant and the Teal sect elders step forward and bow respectfully to greet the host. Qin Wall welcomes the merchant and his son with loud laughter, treating them like honored friends while completely ignoring the Teal sect representatives. He openly mocks the Teal sect, commenting on the unfair privilege that such a weak sect still enjoys within the Muram alliance. Song calmly interrupts the provocation and formally introduces the Teal sect leaders to her father. Looking down at them with open arrogance, Qin Wall finally acknowledges their greeting. Jin San and Master Kang respectfully introduce themselves according to alliance protocol. Then, without warning, Qin Wall mentions a mysterious incident involving Jin Sowoon's father that happened more than 20 years ago. Hearing this, Jin Sowoon is caught completely off guard, having no idea what secret from his father's past is about to be revealed. As they walk through the hall, the Iron Sword sect master mockingly asks about Leader Hong's health before glancing at the younger disciple. Looking down on them, he remarks that neither seems to have a promising future in the martial world. He scoffs that nothing impressive could come from the Teal sect's basic training and laughs that Jin Sowoon is destined to become nothing more than a third-rate martial artist. His mocking speech is abruptly interrupted when Jin Sowoon calmly remarks that every word coming from his mouth is equally irritating and meaningless. The rival master explodes in anger, demanding to know what the insolent boy just said. Jin Sowoon offers an exaggerated apology, claiming he only intended to think it, not say it aloud. Jin Sowoon confronts him and accuses him of disrespecting his sect and his family with his words. He apologizes ironically and says that one shouldn't treat an arrogant person with courtesy. The woman laughs and wonders who this incredibly bold and courageous young man is. The Iron Sword sect leader glares at him with a serious, furious expression. The young leader turns red with anger and calls him a wretched brat through clenched teeth. Jin Sowoon stares back defiantly and asks if he won't accept his apology. The man grips the cup in his hand tightly as his anger continues to build. He shouts, calling him an arrogant brat, and prepares to strike him with the cup. Suddenly, one of the guards announces that the chief strategist of the Muram alliance has just arrived. The Iron Sword sect leader immediately hurries to welcome the strategist and orders everyone to come greet the distinguished guest. The merchant is excited and surprised by the strategist's arrival. He calls the sect leader and suggests they pay their respects together. The sect leader calls for his son, while Jin Sowoon tells his father that he will accompany him as well. The Iron Sword sect leader orders his attendants to bring all the gifts at once. The young leader huffs in frustration and heads off to welcome the important guest. One of Jin Sowoon's companions asks if they should go too, and Jin Sowoon replies that it's better to secure a good spot. Suddenly, someone grabs him by the collar and angrily calls him a brat. It is Jin San, who scolds him for speaking so disrespectfully to the young sect leader. Jin Sowoon defends himself, saying that if he hadn't held back, he would have drawn his sword. He explains that if he noticed the provocation, then the young sect leader must have noticed it as well, meaning it was clearly intentional. Jin San warns him not to act recklessly. Knowing the Iron Sword sect is deliberately provoking them, Jin Sowoon asks what really happened 20 years ago and why his father carries so much bitterness. Jin San remains silent, his face filled with pain and sadness. The tension lingers as Jin Sowoon waits for an answer that never comes. Before anyone can speak, Song interrupts and invites them to sit at one of the best tables in the hall. Master Kang gratefully accepts the offer and urges everyone to follow her. They are escorted escorted to a luxurious VIP table overlooking a beautiful lake filled with lotus flowers. The table is covered with delicacies the members of the Teal sect could never have imagined eating. Song asks for the young master's name. He introduces himself as Jin Sowoon and asks about her. She explains that the women of the Iron Sword sect are not involved in important diplomatic affairs, so she will not be participating further. The Iron Sword sect leader has 2 children. The eldest is the Iron Sword Blood Wolf, Song Mo Heian, while the younger is the Iron Sword Charming Wolf, Song, who is accompanying them. Her brother monopolized the family's cultivation resources as the heir, while Song's exceptional talent earned her a place at the Muram Academy alongside him. While eating, Jin Sowoon reflects on the siblings and on the unusually friendly treatment he is receiving from Song. She teasingly asks if he knows so much about her because he is interested in her. She apologizes for her father's behavior and says she is simply repeating rumors she has heard. Song comments that her father probably regrets losing Yi Chil young to the Teal sect. Taking another bite of food, Jin Sowoon says there is one thing he has been wondering. Looking directly at Song, he asks what the Iron Sword sect's true purpose was in inviting the Teal sect. She meets his gaze with a mysterious smile and calmly replies that a banquet is simply a gathering where people come together to celebrate. Jin Sowoon immediately counters that many of history's greatest incidents have taken place during banquets. Song studies him silently with a thoughtful expression. Finally, she smiles, calls him interesting, and says it is time for her to leave, adding that she enjoyed sharing a meal with him. After giving everyone a graceful bow, she wishes them an enjoyable banquet and quietly departs. Jin Sowoon watches her leave the hall in thoughtful silence. Hong calls out to him. Confused by her reaction, he looks over, but she simply huffs irritably. That evening, groups of young guests gather in the courtyard, eating, drinking, and talking. One young noble approaches Song and invites her to join his table. Soon, several other young men also invite her to sit with them, leaving her unsure how to respond. Suddenly, a voice calls out to Song. She turns in surprise to see her attendant, who asks where she has been since the young master has been looking for her. She slips away to the rooftop, finally enjoying a moment of peace away from the crowd. Thinking back to Jin Sowoon, she admits he was an interesting person. Unlike everyone else, he never lowered his head and remained completely confident, even in front of her father. She wonders whether he simply isn't afraid of the Iron Sword sect or if he's just reckless. Her thoughts are interrupted when she notices something unusual in the courtyard. She spots Hong from the Teal sect leaving together with Guiyang and wonders where they are going. She recalls hearing the young nobles mention a banquet for the younger disciples. Watching Guiyang approach Hong with a malicious smile, she realizes this is going to be interesting. Later, someone knocks on Jin Sowoon's door. He asks who it is before opening it, only to find Song standing outside with a mysterious smile. She invites him to the banquet being held for the younger generation to build friendships. Jin Sowoon politely declines, saying it has been a long day and he is exhausted. Song asks whether everyone from the Teal sect is equally tired, but then casually mentions that she just saw Hong on her way to the disciples' banquet. Jin Sowoon immediately remembers what happened in his previous life. Back then, he attended the banquet, lost his temper, and ended up dueling the Iron Sword sect leader's grandson. That incident ultimately led to his father being publicly humiliated. That is why he wanted to avoid the banquet this time, but now he realizes he has no choice. He cannot leave Hong alone in a place where the Iron Sword sect may have prepared a trap. He gets to his feet and decides to accompany Song to ensure nothing happens to her. Song looks at him curiously and asks whether he truly believes her sect would set a trap. Jin Sowoon smiles and accuses her of having an inferiority complex regarding the Teal sect. Remembering that the women of the Iron Sword sect are not involved in political matters, he asks whether she knows something. She admits that the Teal sect is a thorn in their side but insists that changes nothing. Angrily, she says the Iron Sword sect does not behave like common street thug. Jin Sowoon smiles knowingly and predicts that her brother will eventually create an opportunity to humiliate the Teal sect, turning it into the laughingstock of the gathering. Song shakes her head and says she misjudged him, calling him a paranoid lunatic. Jin Sowoon calmly replies that he also hopes his prediction is nothing more than a delusion. Meanwhile, in a pavilion built over the lake, the banquet for the younger generation is already underway. Inside the hall, one of the Iron Sword sect disciples openly mocks the Teal sect. He questions why the Teal sect still holds one of the 108 peaks while his own sect does not. Guiyang agrees, saying his association remains tied to the Teal sect only because of its academy recommendation. The room bursts into laughter while Hong sits speechless, unable to answer the insult. She lowers her head in frustration, clenching her clothes as she struggles to respond. Raising his cup, one of the young men says he's relieved that Jin Sowoon isn't there. He then approaches Hong and demands the Teal sect's official stance, adding that stagnant, rotten water must be drained away for the greater good. Just as Hong is left speechless, Jin Sowoon enters the hall and calmly says that the Teal sect agrees with that statement. Song is surprised to see him. One of the young nobles recognizes her as the Iron Sword Charming Wolf and invites her to sit beside him. She politely declines, explaining that she is only escorting a guest. Guiyang immediately questions why Jin Sowoon is with Song, but Jin Sowoon ignores him. Calling him a wretch, Guiyang tries to provoke him again. Jin Sowoon scoffs and asks whether Guiyang truly considers himself a senior brother. He accuses him of standing by while the Teal sect was openly insulted and humiliated. Hong hurriedly tells Jin Sowoon to stop arguing and asks why he came. Smiling, he replies that he came because he was worried she might end up causing an incident. As he surveys the room, he notices that while most people are mocking the Teal sect, a few important figures remain completely indifferent. Among them are the awakened divine dragon, the eldest son of the Namong clan and one of Anhawi's hidden dragons, and the Iron Sword Blood Wolf, Song Mohayan, the grandson of the Iron Sword sect leader. The protagonist looks at him and realizes that he, not the others, is the true host of the banquet. A disciple from another sect steps forward with a mischievous smile and accuses Jin Sowoon of interrupting his conversation with Hong. He asks if the young man intends to answer on her behalf. Jin Sowoon remains silent for a moment before casually picking up a piece of food. Completely unfazed, he says he already agreed with him. The disciple is caught off guard. Jin Sowoon continues, saying that a lake stays clean only when fresh water keeps flowing into it. Taking a bite, he adds that this only works if the new water is actually clean. As an example, he brings up the green bamboo castle and its long history of betrayal and dishonor. He asks why a sect with such strength has still not joined the 108 Peaks. Smiling coldly, he reveals that the answer lies in the blood incident that occurred 60 years ago. The disciple immediately turns pale after hearing the forbidden topic mentioned. Jin Sowoon calmly explains that the brothers of Green Bamboo Castle fought among themselves for power. Filling his cup, he says not to misunderstand because they are indeed a powerful sect. However, he refuses to trust an organization where brothers betray one another for ambition. After taking a drink, he remarks that he has no desire to fight alongside people with such a disgraceful history. The entire hall falls silent, stunned by his boldness. Furious, the disciple grabs Jin Sowoon by the collar and accuses him of insulting the honor of Green Bamboo Castle. Jin Sowoon calmly asks what he thinks he is doing at that very moment. Before the disciple can respond, the grandson of the Iron Sword sect leader approaches, causing him to immediately let go. The young heir sternly scolds him for disrespecting a guest of the Iron Sword sect, declaring that insulting one of their guests is no different from insulting the sect itself. He tells his sister not to interfere and states that the disciple from Green Bamboo Castle started the conflict. Jin Sowoon calmly confirms that he saw the man interrupt what had been a civil discussion. Hong grows anxious and begs Jin Sowoon to stop. Instead, Jin Sowoon steps forward, kneels, and admits that his actions have disrupted the banquet. He sincerely apologizes, saying he has no excuse and is willing to accept whatever punishment is given. Song watches in confusion, surprised by his sudden apology. Jin Sowoon also apologizes to the disciple from Green Bamboo Castle for bringing up his sect's past. Then he respectfully says they will take their leave and wishes everyone an enjoyable banquet. Calling for Hong, he prepares to leave, leaving her completely bewildered. Before they can go, Song Mohayan stops them. He accuses Jin Sowoon of insulting a guest in the Iron Sword sect's own hall and says that, as both the sect leader's grandson and a disciple of the Iron Sword sect, he cannot allow the matter to end with a simple apology. Smiling confidently, he challenges Jin Sowoon to settle everything with a duel on the spot. Song immediately realizes that the outcome Jin Sowoon predicted can no longer be avoided. Instead of refusing, Jin Sowoon bursts into laughter and accepts the challenge without hesitation. Still laughing, he says that fighting against fate is pointless because what is destined to happen will happen. With a confident smile, he remarks that his prediction was correct all along. A tear rolls down Song's cheek as she realizes he was right. Back at the inn, he explains to the master that if he had refused the duel, the rival would have targeted young Hong instead. Hong Sarian lowers her head and tearfully admits that her senior accepted the challenge to protect her. He tries to lighten the mood with a joke, but she reminds him that it doesn't change how reckless his decision was. Through her tears, she asks if he really believes he can defeat the rival leader's grandson through luck alone. Seeing how deeply worried she is, he asks her to calm down and assures her he already has a foolproof plan to win. Master Kang angrily snaps that his jokes are only making the girl cry harder. He demands that the young man's father do something about his foolish son, but the father remains silent. Jin Sowoon calmly asks the master not to interfere, insisting he can handle everything himself. Frustrated by the boy's unwavering determination, Master Kang grits his teeth, turns away, and gives up trying to persuade him. His father watches in silence with a worried expression, while the young man quietly promises himself that everything will end well this time. The next day, the imposing headquarters of the Iron Sword sect stands beneath a clear blue sky as the long-awaited duel approaches. The younger sister rushes over to Jin Sowoon, warning him that something serious has happened. She reveals that the leader of the outer hall is in trouble, leaving him alarmed. Realizing the situation involves his father, he immediately sprints through the corridors to stop the worst from happening. At the Iron Sword sect's training ground, everyone's fears have already come true. A large crowd gathers, gossiping about a disciple from the Tai sect who dared to insult the host. Jin Sowoon arrives and is met with the humiliating sight unfolding before him. The leaders of the Iron Sword sect observe from above with arrogant smile. Their leader apologizes to the Murem Alliance strategist for the disturbance, but the guest simply tells him to settle the matter quick. The strategist finds it disgraceful that such a public humiliation is taking place in front of him and realizes the rival sect is determined to drive their enemies out for good. The protagonist's father kneels on the ground, begging for mercy and accepting responsibility for his son's alleged offense. The rival leader demands that he explain exactly what unforgivable crime the Tai sect committed. Bleeding and keeping his head lowered, the man admits that his son spoke words that insulted their sect. As the rival begins mocking his past, he is interrupted by Jin Sowoon's furious shout. Jin Sowoon walks calmly through the crowded courtyard and firmly tells his father to stand up. He asks why he's humiliating himself like this, but his father explains that he only wants to protect his son. Jin Sowoon replies that no son would ever want to see his father reduced to such a pitiful state for his enemy. With a serious expression, he tells his father to step back. The older man hesitates, clenching his fists with mixed pride and concern. The rival heir mocks their family bond, sarcastically calling the scene touching before ordering Jin Sowoon to kneel beside his father and beg for forgiveness. Without hesitation, Jin Sowoon places his hand on the hilt of his sword. He draws his blade and declares that the matter is no longer in his father's hands. He says no apology has any value now and again tells his father to step away. He then declares that he intends to prove to everyone present that he is not someone who only talks but never acts, while the young woman and the other warriors watch with growing concern. The father slowly steps back, silently lamenting the young man's stubborn determination to fight alone. Jin Sowoon looks back with resolve and promises he will not disappoint him during the coming battle. As the tension rises beneath the clear sky, the two opponents finally prepare to duel. Song Mo-haen gestures with his fingers, taunting Jin Sowoon and challenging him to show what his sect is truly capable of. He raises his massive sword, saying he wants to witness the real skills of an heir of the 100 Peaks. Although the rival has grown up with every possible advantage, the protagonist has strengths of his own. The enemy's heavy sword is poorly suited to Jin Sowoon's light and exceptionally fast fighting style. Hoping to overwhelm him immediately, the rival attacks with full force, but his eyes widen when Jin Sowoon reacts with incredible speed. Their swords collide in a powerful clash, and Jin Sowoon blocks the attack perfectly. Annoyed that his opponent keeps slipping away, the rival grips his giant sword even tighter. The two exchange rapid strikes, sending sparks across the arena as each searches for an opening. The rival then unleashes a devastating vertical slash, intending to split Jin Sowoon in half. The impact shatters the ground, throwing dust and broken stone throughout the courtyard. Watching from the sidelines, the Murem Alliance strategist concludes that the Tai sect's lack of talent may indeed be true. Hidden within the dust, the rival arrogantly asks if that is all the young man can do. Jin Sowoon remains standing despite the crushing force, sweat running down his forehead under the immense pressure. The rival mocks his fighting style, claiming there is nothing remarkable about it. Jin Sowoon regains his footing, plants himself firmly, and tells his opponent to be quiet. He rushes forward at incredible speed, declaring that the real fight is only beginning. They resume exchanging fast, relentless attacks, each keeping their full attention on the other's movements. Tai heir feels the tremendous force behind every collision and realizes his opponent is stronger than expected. Wearing a sadistic smile, the rival rival asks if Jin Sowoon remembers someone just like him. He reveals that years ago, a man insulted their sect and was thoroughly defeated by his father. That proud warrior refused to apologize for a crime he never committed, so he was brutally punished with a red-hot metal blade. The burns left permanent scars across his back, chest, and abdomen. Smiling maliciously, the rival reveals that the disgraced man was none other than Jin Tan of the Tai sect. Jin Sowoon is stunned as memories of his father's terrible scars suddenly make sense. He instinctively looks back, trying to process the truth, while his father watches him in silence with a heavy expression. Seizing the moment of distraction, the rival delivers a violent kick, shouting that he should never take his eyes off his opponent. The blow sends Jin Sowoon flying across the stone ground as the crowd erupts. His companions desperately call out his name after seeing the direct hit. Struggling back to his feet, he reflects on the humiliation and suffering his father endured all those years. The rival sneers that both father and son are arrogant fools who never knew their place around the arena. The spectators mock the Tai sect, insisting it has always been and always will be pathetic. The rival leaders watch from the balcony with satisfied smiles, convinced history is about to repeat itself. With his back still turned, Jin Sowoon takes a slow breath and calmly asks whether everyone truly believes such nonsense. He steadies himself, preparing to unleash his full strength and end his opponent's arrogance. Confident as ever, the rival charges forward again, delivering another swift strike while mocking the Tai sect's simple technique. With remarkable ease, the protagonist leans back and avoids the attack with extraordinary reflexes. The rival is stunned when his strike misses and meets only Jin Sowoon's calm, unwavering gaze. Jin Sowoon immediately counters with a series of lightning-fast strikes that slice through the air with precise accuracy. The opponent desperately blocks, but panic sets in as he realizes Jin Sowoon has completely changed his fighting rhythm. He is pushed into a flawless sequence of attacks that he cannot predict. Forced backward, the rival angrily demands to know what kind of trick the young man is using. Jin Sowoon advances with unwavering determination, increasing the pressure. He unleashes a devastating series of rapid cuts, leaving his opponent no time to react. Using a modified sword technique refined into his own style, he exceeds everyone's expectation. The rival suffers repeated cuts across his body, crying out in pain and frustration as Jin Sowoon continues his relentless assault without giving him a chance to recover. Spitting blood, the rival braces himself against his giant sword to keep from collapsing before the stunned audience. Jin Sowoon smiles sarcastically and asks if that is truly the limit of the feared rival sect's strength. Humiliated and enraged, the rival calls him an insignificant insect. Gathering everything he has left, he raises his massive sword and unleashes his ultimate mountain-breaking technique. The devastating strike shatters the stone floor, forcing spectators to retreat from the powerful shockwave. As dust fills the arena, the surrounding warriors shield their faces, fearing for Jin Sowoon's safety. The rival continues raining down destructive blows through the dust, determined to finish the fight. Blinded by rage, he shouts that he will crush the insect who dared mock his strength and lineage. To his shock, Jin Sowoon emerges unharmed, effortlessly parrying the attack with incredible precision. Panic spreads across the rival's face as his strongest technique is neutralized so easily. Jin Sowoon remains completely focused as their blades collide again and again. They exchange rapid strikes while sparks flash through the dust-filled arena. Watching from a distance, the enemy leader is horrified to realize that the Tai sect's swordsmanship is too refined for his son. The Murem Alliance strategist watches with an impressed smile, recognizing that Jin Sowoon's real combat experience is far superior. Crowd grows restless as their favored heir is steadily driven back. Jin Sowoon reflects on the resentment and injustice his family has endured for years. He knows that winning this duel alone will not be enough to end that cycle. The rival makes one final desperate charge, convinced the protagonist's luck has run out. He pours every remaining ounce of strength into a last attack, swinging his giant sword with everything he has. Jin Sowoon sidesteps the strike and lightly places his hand against the rival's chest, channeling a mysterious spiritual energy. The rival's eyes widen as sudden weakness spreads through his body. Confused, he demands to know what Jin Sowoon has done while trying to attack again. Advancing with complete confidence, Jin Sowoon silently vows that after today, the rival sect will be the one left in disgrace. In the next instant, the giant sword is knocked high into the air as Mo Haein is hurled backward in complete defeat. The entire audience stares in stunned silence at the shocking outcome. Sweating and covered in blood, the defeated rival cannot comprehend how he lost so decisively. Jin Sowoon looks down at his fallen opponent with calm, unwavering composure. The massive sword crashes onto the stone floor, breaking the ground beneath it. Mo Haein scrambles backward across the courtyard in fear. Mo stares up with clenched teeth, unable to understand how a junior has defeated him so completely. He realizes he has dropped the sword he valued above everything else, and his fist trembles against the stone as he curses his humiliating defeat. Refusing to accept that the Blood Wolf Iron Sword has lost to someone like Jin, he struggles to recover. Before he can regain his footing, Jin is already in front of him, controlling every step between them. Another strike sends him crashing to the ground as dust and blood rise into the air. Blood runs from his mouth while his desperate attempt to reach forward ends in failure. Above the arena, the old master watches in cold silence, already convinced of the duel's outcome. Jin advances calmly, every movement displaying complete control. Mo is driven back again, unable to read or stop his opponent's swordsmanship. Sprawled across the ground and gasping for breath, he experiences a humiliation he knows he will never forget. Forcing himself back up, Mo fixes a furious stare on Jin while desperately searching for an explanation. As he examines his condition, he realizes his internal energy is repeatedly being interrupted, preventing him from using his techniques properly. His battered hands shake as the strength he has always relied on slips away. Refusing to believe the Iron Sword sect can be surpassed through skill alone, he raises his sword once more and prepares one final attack. Jin calmly readies his own sword, prepared to answer the challenge with a single precise movement. As hatred consumes him, Mo convinces himself that Jin must have used a forbidden Murim alliance technique to disrupt his spiritual energy. Desperate to protect what remains of his pride, he publicly accuses Jin of relying on forbidden arts during the duel. Before the accusation can spread further, the white-haired sect leader intervenes and orders everyone to stop. Although Mo stubbornly insists that he felt forbidden technique himself, Jin remains completely composed as the accusation begins to fall apart. The disciples immediately begin whispering about the heaven-devouring art, forbidden technique rumored to consume an opponent's chi. A heavy silence settles over the courtyard while the sect leader warns that such accusations should never be made without certainty. Only then does fear appear on Mo's face as he realizes the consequences of his reckless claim. The sect leader quietly expresses disappointment, ashamed that the grandson he once praised has reduced himself to this point. Jin calmly explains that he originally apologized and even tried to avoid the duel, but Mo Haiyan insisted on fighting over the supposed insult to his sect. Left with no other choice, he accepted the challenge with the sole intention of winning through his own ability and defending the Tai sect's honor. Watching from the crowd, Hong So-yeon burns with anger at the rival sect's shameless conduct. Bruised but unshaken before the gathered 100 peaks, Jin stands firmly with the truth on his side. The old master silently decides to continue observing. Around the arena, the elders quietly acknowledge that falsely accusing another sect of practicing forbidden arts is an extremely serious offense, while Mo Haiyan watches the Iron Sword sect's reputation collapse with every desperate attempt to defend his claim. Mo forces himself back to his feet, desperately insisting that he is the Blood Wolf Iron Sword and cannot accept losing to a mere disciple of the Tai sect. Unable to face the reality of his defeat, he convinces himself that only forbidden sorcery could explain the outcome. He repeatedly claims that Jin Sowoon used such a technique throughout the duel and desperately begs everyone to believe him. The old sect leader lets out a long, weary sigh as he watches his grandson disgrace both himself and the sect. Slowly approaching Jin Sowoon, he declares that the accusation of forbidden arts cannot be ignored and insists on conducting a personal inspection. Jin Sowoon immediately objects, arguing that there is no reason to stop a match that has already been decided. Ignoring him, the leader orders his men to search Jin Sowoon by force. Jin Sowoon accuses the rival sect of trying to frame a smaller sect out of jealousy, but the leader questions whether he is lying. With a defiant smile, Jin Sowoon asks what they will offer if he is proven completely innocent. The rival leader angrily orders him to be silent, claiming that his arrogance only makes him more suspicious. He declares that he will inspect Jin Sowoon himself and hold the entire Tai sect responsible if he finds any trace of a forbidden art. Jin Sowoon suddenly calls out to his father, his voice echoing across the courtyard. Everyone watches in stunned silence as his attitude shifts. He draws his sword and calmly declares that he is willing to give his life to protect his sect's honor. His father stares at him in horror, realizing the seriousness of his resolve. Jin Sowoon asks the outer hall leader to ensure that no one touches his body if he falls or is injured there. Taking his stance, he declares that he will defend his family's honor until his final breath and would rather die than allow his clan's name to be stained by the rival sect's scheme. With burning determination, he formally challenges the supreme leader of the rival sect to a duel. The disciples erupt in panic, unable to believe that a young man would challenge the sect's supreme leader. Enraged by the insult, the old man demands to know how a mere brat dares speak to him that way. He releases an overwhelming wave of spiritual energy that cracks the ground and blankets the courtyard with crushing pressure. The shockwave throws nearby warriors off their feet, leaving the crowd in panic before his terrifying strength. Without hesitation, Jin Sowoon So-eun's father and master Kang step forward and draw their swords to shield him. Jin So-eun looks on in surprise as both men stand in front of him. His father angrily orders him to step back, declaring that no worthy father would ever send his own son to die first. Laughing coldly, the rival leader charges forward, vowing to wipe out the Tai sect's lineage. The disciples and warriors watch in terror, convinced a massacre is about to begin. At that moment, a calm but commanding voice echoes across the courtyard, ordering everyone to stop. The rival leader immediately halts as the Muram Alliance strategist steps between the two sides and orders everyone to lower their swords. Frustrated but unable to ignore him, the rival leader withdraws. The strategist then turns to Jin So-eun and firmly instructs him to sheath his weapon as well. Jin So-eun refuses. The rival leader furiously condemns him for daring to defy the Muram Alliance strategist. The strategist remains composed. Instead of becoming angry, he asks Jin So-eun to explain why he refuses to obey. Jin So-eun explains that the rival sect used the duel as an excuse to humiliate his family before trapping them with false accusations. He asks where the strategist's authority was while his family was being publicly disgraced and questions why he should trust it now. The strategist smiles at the bold response, acknowledging that the young heir possesses uncommon courage. He explains that his authority represents the entire alliance and admits he intentionally observed the duel before choosing the right moment to intervene. Quietly stepping closer, he asks Jin So-eun what he truly wants to resolve the conflict. The protagonist fixes the supreme leader with a piercing gaze and prepares to reveal his boldest demand. In a cold, unwavering voice, he points his sword at him and declares that what he wants most is the rival sect leader's head. The strategist gives a faint smile, recognizing the extraordinary boldness of the request. He realizes that even if the young man dies, he will be remembered as a martyr while the rival sect's reputation will be permanently damaged. Finding the situation increasingly interesting, the strategist concludes that this incident could become the beginning of the rival sect's downfall. He turns to the master of the Iron Sword sect and asks whether he is confident enough to stake his sect's name on the accusation. The old master tries to avoid the challenge, arguing that investigating forbidden arts is every alliance member's duty. He insists he is willing to take full responsibility with his own honor. The strategist dismisses the answer and raises the stakes, demanding that the master also wager the sect's legendary sacred weapon as collateral for his claim. Jin So-eun is surprised by the proposal, immediately recognizing the strategist's clever move. The sacred weapon is the family's greatest treasure. The old master panics, insisting he never agreed to risk the heirloom passed down by his ancestors. The strategist calmly replies that if he is truly certain of the boy's guilt, he should have nothing to fear from the inspection. As whispers spread through the crowd, many spectators begin questioning the rival sect's motive. They suspect the supreme leader is abusing his authority to oppress a weaker sect. Surrounded by growing doubt and mounting pressure, the master of the Iron Sword sect falls silent. With no other way to preserve his honor, he reluctantly accepts the strategist's term. Satisfied, the strategist turns to Jin So-eun to begin the examination. The young heir of the Tai sect takes a deep breath and calmly prepares for the inspection. The strategist tells him to relax and not resist. Placing two fingers on Jin So-eun's wrist, he guides his spiritual energy through the young man's body to examine the flow of his internal power. A bright blue light shines between them as the entire courtyard watches in complete silence. Nearby, the defeated rival silently hopes the inspection will uncover signs of forbidden arts. If Jin So-eun had cultivated such techniques, his energy center would contain an unstable mixture of conflicting power. Jin So-eun remains completely calm, knowing there is nothing abnormal within him. The strategist deepens his examination and discovers that the young man's spiritual energy flows with remarkable purity. His eyes widen slightly as he recognizes the extraordinary precision and flawless cultivation before him. The audience holds its breath, waiting for the verdict that will determine the Tai sect's fate. The strategist withdraws his hand and formally announces that Jin So-eun has never practiced any forbidden art. The old leader of the Iron Sword sect is left in despair, unable to accept that the young man is innocent. His defeated grandson erupts, shouting that the verdict is a lie and desperately insisting everyone believe his accusation. Refusing to accept the decision, the rival leader suddenly rushes forward to inspect Jin So-eun himself. Consumed by anger, he launches a treacherous attack that catches everyone off guard. He strikes Jin So-eun in the chest with a violent surge of electrical energy. Jin So-eun cries out in pain as his father and master Kang rush forward to stop the assault. The powerful blow sends blood spraying across the training courtyard. The young woman of the clan screams in desperation, begging her grandfather to stop before he kills him. The rival leader finally releases Jin Sowoon, who collapses to the ground covered in blood as the crackling energy fades. His father and master Kang immediately rush to support him while the strategist condemns the rival leader's reckless actions. Fixing him with a dark, intimidating stare, the strategist demands an explanation for attacking the young man. The old master trembles as he realizes there was never any trace of forbidden arts and that he has made a grave mistake. Bleeding heavily with trembling hands, Jin Sowoon struggles to open his eyes and face his attacker. Through labored breaths, he demands that the supreme leader of the rival sect answer for his cowardly action. Supported by his distressed companions, he calls for a formal apology for the injustice. The leader's grandson watches in terrified silence, fully aware of the consequences of his grandfather's attack. The young woman breaks into tears as she sees the damage caused by her family's ambition and wounded pride. Raising his blood-stained hand toward the old master of the Iron Sword sect, Jin Sowoon fearlessly declares that the rival sect will pay for its cowardice. After making his final demand for justice, his strength gives out. He loses consciousness in his father's arms as the desperate man cries for help amid the chaos spreading through the arena. The entire rival sect stands in stunned silence, realizing the seriousness of what their supreme leader has done. The Muram Alliance strategist fixes the old man with a cold stare and firmly orders him to honor the promise he made. The following day, peace slowly returns as sunlight shines over the Tai sect's inn. Jin Sowoon finally regains consciousness, letting out a painful groan as the injuries from the previous battle remind him of the brutal attack. He slowly opens his eyes, recalling the rival sect and everything that happened. Suddenly, he sits upright in bed and angrily demands to see the master of the rival sect who attacked him. At that moment, someone lightly taps the table and calmly remarks that he has finally awakened. Meanwhile, deep inside the rat-infested dungeons, the rival heir remains imprisoned behind iron bars. Song Mo-haen angrily insists that Jin Sowoon used sorcery during the duel and desperately begs his grandfather to believe that his spiritual energy was stolen. Turning away with contempt, the old master says his foolish grandson still has not come to his senses after the defeat. Bitterly regretting that he ever considered making him the sect's successor, he declares that the young man will not receive even a drop of water until he reflects on his disgraceful behavior. The heavy dungeon door closes, leaving Song Mo-haen shouting alone in the darkness. Back in the temple room, the strategist calmly asks whether the protagonist's little performance is finally over. Jin Sowoon is genuinely surprised to find the Muram Alliance strategist sitting quietly at a desk writing document. He tries to act innocent by casually whistling, but under the strategist's watchful gaze, he quickly realizes such excuses will not work. Master Zhujo Meiyang tells him to stop wasting time, revealing that he already knows every detail of his scheme. As one of the continent's greatest strategic minds, he easily saw through it. Jin Sowoon finally asks whether the strategist understood his plan from the moment he began provoking the rival sect. The strategist confirms that he did. He explains that Jin Sowoon deliberately provoked the rival leader into attacking him while using the alliance's presence as protection against a direct confrontation. He even reveals that the blood Jin Sowoon spat came from a wound he intentionally made inside his own cheek. Setting his brush aside, the strategist asks when the young man first came up with such a plan. Jin Sowoon hesitates, searching for a convincing answer. As the quiet conversation continues in the peaceful temple room, a bead of sweat rolls down his face while the strategist calmly sips his tea. With a playful smile, the strategist asks whether Jin Sowoon has forgotten how to answer questions. Instead of responding, Jin Sowoon notices a massive weapon resting beside the table and immediately changes the subject. His eyes light up as he excitedly asks whether the imposing sword is the legendary sacred weapon promised as the reward. Eager to inspect it, he asks if he can examine the treasured weapon up close. The Muram Alliance strategist watches his exaggerated reaction in complete disbelief, reminding him that he is the one asking the question. As Jin Sowoon secretly starts thinking about how much he could sell the sacred sword for, the strategist shakes his head at the young man's shameless behavior. Jin Sowoon finally admits that he never had a long-term plan. Instead, he simply relied on the memories he retained from before returning to the past to teach the rival sect an unforgettable lesson. The experienced strategist studies the young heir in silence, trying to process his explanation. He asks how Jin Sowoon could have predicted the exact moment the rival would accuse him of using forbidden arts. Jin Sowoon decides to keep the truth to himself, knowing that revealing any more would come at a great cost. Holding the treasured weapon, he teasingly says that since the strategist helped him win, he has already answered one question. The old old strategist scoffs, reminding him that countless people would pay a fortune for the opportunity to speak with him. Jin So-un simply smiles, says he has nothing more to gain, and casually prepares to leave. The strategist is left speechless by the young man's shameless confidence. He places a small box on the table and says he will reward Jin So-un if he fully explains how he predicted the rival's false accusation. With a sly grin, Jin So-un begins to negotiate. He explains that there was no mystery, only the certainty that the rival's pride would never allow him to accept defeat. Laughing, he admits that the only thing he failed to predict was the accusation of spiritual energy theft. Privately, he is pleased that although he truly used the technique, his special bracelet purified his spiritual energy. Because of that hidden safeguard, not even the continent's greatest strategist could detect any trace of forbidden arts within his danshin. Shifting the conversation, Jin So-un eagerly asks whether he can finally open the small box. As soon as he lifts the lid, his eyes widen at the sight of the legendary spiritual pills from the feared rival sect. Delighted, he gratefully thanks the strategist for the rare reward. Watching him quietly, the strategist stands and asks why Jin So-un did not simply defeat his opponent cleanly if he had been so confident in victory. Jin So-un explains that an easy victory would have been dismissed as mere luck. He wanted to silence the rival sect completely. He then asks what would have happened to his family if no one had been there to defend them against the false accusation. He admits that even if he had died, his body itself would have proven his innocence and preserved his sect's honor. The strategist grows thoughtful and asks whether he was truly prepared to risk his life. He finds it difficult to understand why the young man would gamble everything over something he considers insignificant. Annoyed, Jin So-un clenches his fist and refuses to let anyone belittle his family's dignity. The atmosphere grows tense as the two face each other with unwavering expression. Jin So-un asks whether the great Jude family truly considers the honor of a small sect worthless. He firmly insists that the Tai sect has every right to fight with all its strength to protect its name. The strategist's eyes widen slightly before he suddenly bursts into genuine laughter. He admits that supporting Jin So-un has become unexpectedly entertaining. Confused by the reaction, Jin So-un realizes once again that the old man is unlike anyone else. Still amused, the strategist presents him with a second mysterious reward. Jin So-un examines the object with curiosity before recognizing it as an important admission plaque. His eyes widen in shock as he realizes its true value. The plaque grants direct admission to the prestigious Muram Academy without requiring the entrance examination. Holding it tightly, Jin So-un realizes he can now send another Tai sect disciple to the famous academy. He sincerely thanks the strategist, who then says that after graduation, Jin So-un must work at his pavilion of connection. Jin So-un is stunned, recalling the pavilion's notorious reputation for exhausting its employees. In his previous life, he heard that those serving in the pavilion of 10,000 dragons worked endlessly and rarely even found time to marry. With a slightly unsettling smile, the strategist assures him that a place has already been reserved. Before Jin So-un can respond, the old man suddenly leaps out the window despite the door being only a few steps away. Laughing loudly, the strategist bids him farewell and tells him not to take too long before joining the pavilion of 10,000 dragons. Jin So-un desperately calls after him, trying to stop him, but it is already too late. The old master disappears into the distance, happily declaring that the pavilion of 10,000 dragons is about to become much livelier. The next day, the atmosphere at the imposing headquarters of the Iron Sword sect is much quieter. Xian watches the guests leave the courtyard from beneath the shade of a beautiful tree covered in purple flowers. She quietly reflects on her grandfather's warning that everyone would be held responsible if the young heir failed to prove his innocence. She remembers his blind rage as he accused Jin So-un of using forbidden arts without considering that he had simply been defeated. She also recalls the bloodied Jin So-un declaring that the Iron Sword sect would pay dearly for its cowardly action. The young woman thinks back to the moment he risked everything to defend his family's dignity and the Tai sect's honor. Looking away sadly, Xian realizes that her relative's actions have severely damaged the Iron Sword sect's reputation. At that moment, Jin So-un quietly approaches from behind and asks why she is standing there alone. Startled by his sudden voice, Xian lets out a surprised cry before turning around. She freezes when she sees Jin So-un carrying his belongings, ready to leave. Nervously fidgeting with her hands, she struggles to find the right words. After gathering her courage, she lowers her head and admits that his actions during the dispute were far too reckless and dangerous. Jin So-eun looks at her curiously and asks why she believes he was reckless. Meeting his gaze, Sion questions why he was willing to risk his own life during the duel. She wonders why he chose such an extreme course of action in front of all the Murim Alliance leaders, recalling that even the strategist questioned whether risking one's life for something others considered insignificant was truly worthwhile. Jin So-eun responds by asking whether she believes the Tai sect should have silently accepted such cowardly humiliation. Looking at her seriously, he questions whether she truly expected him to bow his head and submit instead of defending his sect's honor. Sion immediately shakes her head in distress, gesturing anxiously as she explains that she never meant to criticize him that way. She soon falls silent, realizing her words may have hurt the young heir who only fought to protect his sect's honor. For a few moments, she lowers her head beneath the falling petals, weighed down by guilt and shame over her grandfather's actions. With a heavy heart, she sincerely apologizes for everything that happened, though she fears her apology can never make up for it. Jin So-eun calmly tells her that he understands and gently asks her to lift her head. Looking up in surprise, Sion is moved by the maturity and generosity of the young Tai sect disciple. Jin So-eun explains that he accepts her apology because he knows he will never receive one from the Iron Sword sect leader. Sion promises to speak with her grandfather in hopes of easing the conflict, but Jin So-eun gently stops her. Smiling warmly, he tells her there is no reason to continue the cycle of resentment. Her eyes fill with tears as she is deeply touched by his kindness. Carrying his newly won treasure, Jin So-eun advises her to take responsibility by helping change the Iron Sword sect from within. Resting the massive sword across his shoulders, he slowly walks away beneath the purple blossoms, reminding her that, in the end, every sect belongs to the same Murim alliance. Sion quietly watches him leave, reflecting on the arrogance of both her brother and grandfather during the previous day's events. She realizes that their refusal to offer even a sincere apology turned the conflict into a disgrace for the Iron Sword sect. Wiping away her tears with her sleeve, she tries to regain her composure as a disciple. Noticing her crying, Jin So-eun becomes flustered and lightly jokes that tears do not suit a strong swordswoman. Gathering her courage, Sion walks over and offers him a beautiful black box as a symbol of her wish for peace between their sects. Jin So-eun holds the box, instantly recognizing its value through the memories of his previous life. Inside is the steel protection pill, a rare elixir reserved exclusively for the direct bloodline of a sect. Before they part, Sion sincerely expresses her hope that they will meet again as friends rather than enemies. Jin So-eun smiles, believing that this time he may truly be able to change the future. A few days later, the weathered gates of the Tai sect stand proudly beneath the sky as Jin So-eun returns home. The younger disciples rush toward him in excitement, surrounding him with relief after fearing he would never return alive. They cling to him, unable to hide how worried they had been, while one of them throws himself into Jin So-eun with tears of relief. Nearby, a gray-haired disciple watches the reunion with folded arms, pretending to be annoyed despite the pride growing inside him. He reflects on how he once regretted joining the Tai sect when it was looked down upon by everyone. Believing the lesser heaven sword technique would never lead him anywhere, he had nearly given up. Now, inspired by Jin So-eun, he is proud to call himself a disciple of the Tai sect. Gripping his sword firmly, he silently vows to master the lesser heaven sword technique and become a disciple worthy of following Jin So-eun's example. The two continue walking together, their bonds strengthened through hardship and shared determination. The sect leader laughs, admitting he has not slept since hearing the news from the Iron Sword sect. Gathering all the hall leaders, he reflects on how the Tai sect endured humiliation for generations simply because it lacked the strength to resist. Now, a single young disciple has accomplished what none of the sect's elders ever could. Feeling both grateful and ashamed, the sect leader openly acknowledges that Jin So-eun protected the Tai sect's honor when the adults could not. Determined to reward him, he declares that he will personally cover the expense if necessary. Ignoring every protest about the sect's empty treasury, he enthusiastically announces a grand celebration. The elder responsible for the sect's finances immediately objects, refusing to approve such extravagant spending despite the sect leader's insistence. Watching the familiar argument unfold, Jin So-eun smiles quietly, happy to see the sect leader acting like his old self again. After the discussion, it is decided that the remaining Iron Heart Pill will be awarded to whichever disciple shows the greatest improvement in cultivation. Meanwhile, the senior disciple responsible for the accounts sits behind an abacus, grumbling over every coin being spent. Buried beneath ledgers, he complains that the sect leader has completely lost his senses by giving away so much for a single iron heart pill. The sect leader dismisses the complaints without hesitation, insisting he would gladly sacrifice even more for someone who defended the Tai sect's honor. Ever since the events at the Iron Sword sect became known, people throughout the region have begun paying attention to the Tai sect once again. Remembering how the sect has always struggled to survive, the senior disciple continues complaining that they cannot afford such generosity. Jin Sowoon calmly points out that 3 guest houses in Heath could generate enough income to purchase 5 iron heart pills every year. Although the accountant refuses to admit it, he secretly feels proud that the sect leader finally chose dignity over profit. Still grumbling, the elder notices Jin Sowoon quietly heading toward the gate and demands to know where he is going and how he plans to earn money for the sect. Jin Sowoon simply smiles, placing a blade of grass between his teeth as he confidently sets out to seize the opportunity he remembers from his previous life. As the sun begins to set, the busy streets of Heath remain filled with merchants and travelers going about their daily lives. Standing above the bustling city is Manga Manor, home to one of the 3 wealthiest merchant families on the continent. At the front gate, 2 guards quietly exchange rumors about the extraordinary beauty of the mansion lord's daughter, whom few people have ever seen. Deep inside the estate, a lone servant crosses the silent courtyard after being summoned to a matter that wealth alone cannot solve. Beyond the heavy wooden doors lies the secluded room where the mansion's sick young lady remains hidden from the outside world. A trembling hand reaches for the door latch as freezing air seeps through the cracks. Inside Manga Manor, Lord Wang Junsen sits quietly, his face worn from countless sleepless nights. The room is covered in frost, untouched meals have gone cold, and the sound of persistent coughing echoes through the icy chamber. Even a young attendant struggles to breathe in the freezing air that no amount of fire can overcome. At the center of the room, Wang Soso sits wrapped in thick furs, every breath leaving her lips as a cloud of white mist. As beautiful as the rumors describe, the mansion lord's only daughter is burdened by the mysterious illness consuming her body. She gently tells her father that she spent the day working on new embroidery, proudly showing him the delicate design she completed despite her condition. Watching her, Wang Junsen hides his pain, knowing every comfort he provides only delays the inevitable. The room is filled with objects that constantly release cold air in an attempt to suppress the burning fever inside her body. Bowls of ice surround her bed, and an enormous fortune has already been spent trying to ease an illness that no physician understands. The attending doctor sadly admits that none of his medical knowledge can cure her condition. Even in the frozen room, sweat covers Wang Soso's face as the unbearable heat within her body continues to worsen. The doctor can only conclude that she is unlikely to survive beyond the age of 20. Despite the grim prognosis, Wang Soso refuses to lose hope. She assures her father that she already has everything she needs and asks for nothing more than the chance to visit the marketplace beyond the mansion. Having spent her entire life confined behind sealed windows, she simply wants to experience the outside world. Embarrassed by the request, she apologizes for asking for something she believes is unreasonable. Deeply moved, Wang Junsen reveals that he has already commissioned a special carriage designed to maintain the same cold environment as her room, allowing her to leave the mansion safely whenever she wishes. Overcome with joy, Wang Soso embraces her father through tears, repeatedly thanking him for making her lifelong dream possible. Seeing her smile, Wang Junsen silently vows once again that no amount of wealth is too great if it means saving his daughter. As night falls over the estate, the peaceful atmosphere is quietly replaced by unseen danger. Later, Wang Junsen rushes into his daughter's room only to find it empty. Ice is scattered across the floor and the only thing left behind is a ransom note. Reading it, he realizes that Wang Soso has been kidnapped. Enraged, he immediately orders every guard to search for the kidnappers and offers an enormous reward to anyone who can rescue his daughter, promising to pay whatever it takes to bring her home. Elsewhere, Jin Sowoon stops at a village notice board where news of the kidnapping has already spread. Remembering the incident from his previous life, he immediately recognizes the opportunity before him. He realizes that rescuing Wang Soso will earn something far more valuable than money. A simple business transaction would end once both sides gained what they wanted, but genuine gratitude from one of the continent's wealthiest merchant families could secure lasting support for the Tai sect. Confident in his plan, Jin Sowoon follows the clues preserved in his memories. He recalls several kidnapping cases reported around Heath and Ko Lake, but one particular case involving a young girl never matched the others. Moving swiftly across rooftops, treetops and through the darkness, he follows that forgotten trail until he reaches a secluded cabin hidden deep in the wilderness. There he finds the masked kidnappers surrounding Wang Soso, who lies bound on the floor with an unnaturally high fever. Jin Sowoon is genuinely surprised. In all the memories of his previous life, there was never any mention that Wang Soso suffered from such a mysterious illness. A sword flashes toward Jin Sowoon as the kidnappers move to eliminate the last witness to their plan. He slips through the darkness and closes the distance in an instant. His blade cuts cleanly through one attacker's guard, sending the masked man staggering backward. The remaining assassin quickly recovers and the two exchange rapid strikes as steel clashes through the dimly lit cabin. While the battle unfolds, Wang Soso slowly regains consciousness, opening her eyes in confusion amid the chaos. When the fighting ends, Jin Sowoon stands alone among the defeated kidnappers. He kneels beside Wang Soso, unties her restraints, and is immediately startled by the intense heat radiating from her body. Carefully supporting her weakened frame, he asks if she is conscious before introducing himself as Jin Sowoon of the Tai sect. To avoid raising suspicion, he explains that he happened to be passing through the forest when unusual sounds drew him to the cabin. As a martial artist, he could not ignore someone in danger. Wang Soso weakly thanks him, explaining that her father will generously reward the person who rescued her. As Jin Sowoon steadies her, he realizes her acupuncture points are close to burning out completely. He immediately understands that her condition is far more serious than an ordinary fever. Searching through the countless medical texts preserved in his memories from the Muram Alliance, he recalls the Compendium of 10,000 Cures, written by the second Huichu. The text describes the solar constitution, a rare congenital physique that constantly generates intense fire chi throughout the body. In severe cases, it burns the acupuncture points and gradually destroys the body, while only cold air can temporarily relieve the symptoms. The truth finally becomes clear to Jin Sowoon. Wang Soso is not suffering from a disease but from the solar constitution itself, a rare bodily condition believed to have no cure. Jin Sowoon is shocked to realize the girl is born with the solar constitution and feels sorry for what she has endured. He remembers that in his previous life, the Lord spent his entire fortune searching for Wang Soso but never found her. He concludes the kidnappers must have harmed her and kept her hidden. As he notices her condition worsening, he wonders if the solar constitution is the real cause of her illness, and considers whether a certain method might work. As the girl timidly calls to him from the floor, he approaches her and explains that he may know a way to change her constitution and save her. She immediately blushes and is left speechless by the unexpected possibility. Alone inside the wooden cabin, she trembles as she desperately asks him to explain the method, insisting she will do anything to survive and pleading for his help. Surprised by her desperation, Jin Sowoon tells her to calm down and reminds her not to trust strangers so easily. She explains that she can recognize someone with sincere intentions, especially after he rescued her from the kidnappers. Accepting her reasoning, he decides to explain everything before beginning the treatment. He tells her about a supreme master from the past who possessed the rare lunar constitution. That unique body allowed her to reach the pinnacle of ice martial arts, but it also prevented her from having children. Desperate to overcome that limitation, she sought the divine doctor who eventually discovered a way to invert extreme constitution. Jin Sowoon believes the reversed method should also work for her, but warns that it comes with one major condition. She must take Tak Pillik every day and cultivate only the energy of his sect. She readily accepts because she has no desire to become a martial artist. All she wants is to enjoy an ordinary life with her family, hold the hand of someone she loves, and grow old in peace. As she quietly sheds tears while sharing that simple wish, Jin Sowoon realizes that all her wealth is meaningless if she cannot experience everyday happiness. He agrees to help and begins preparing the treatment. Just then, he senses enemies approaching, leaving Wang Soso confused by his sudden warning. Before she can ask anything, he gently strikes her neck, causing her to lose consciousness. Catching her carefully before she falls, he apologizes, knowing it would create serious problems if she or her family learned his true identity. Outside, several masked warriors quietly surround the cabin. In the darkness, their leader orders everyone to move in quickly and secure the hostage while warning them not to use the Namong clan's sword techniques, which would reveal their identity. Before they can act, Jin Sowoon appears on the roof and openly mocks them by mentioning the noble Namong clan. Startled by his sudden appearance, the masked warriors demand to know who he is. He calmly drops from the roof with his sword in hand and says he is simply there to ruin their plan. The leader immediately decides no witnesses can be left alive. Unfazed, Jin Sowoon reveals that he already knows who they serve and exposes their connection to the merchant group. The leader freezes after hearing the name of his true master. Jin Sowoon continues by revealing that he also knows the kidnapping was meant to undermine the influential Wanga family. Realizing their secret has been exposed, the leader unleashes his dark energy. The masked warriors rush forward together, together, using the forbidden sword technique of the Namong clan. Jin Sowoon smiles as they fall directly into his trap by revealing their signature technique. He blocks their combined attacks with ease, proving he completely controls the battle. In an instant, he strikes one masked warrior squarely in the face. Shocked by his incredible speed, the attackers accuse him of fighting like a coward while struggling to defend themselves. Ignoring them, he lands another powerful blow that sends another opponent crashing to the ground. He mocks their complaints, pointing out that a group attacking a single person has no right to complain. Provoked, one warrior unleashes the second form of the clan's sword technique. Pretending to be impressed, Jin Sowoon effortlessly avoids every strike while casually explaining how the technique should have been executed. The warrior screams in frustration, unable to understand how every attack is being predicted. Cold sweat forms on his forehead as he struggles to accept that an unknown young man can completely outclass the supreme sword technique of the Namong clan. Tightening his grip on his sword as dark energy gathers around him, the leader claims Jin Sowoon has simply been lucky and warns that the real battle is about to begin. He prepares the clan's ultimate secret technique before charging at Jin Sowoon with incredible speed. Locking his eyes on his target, he commits everything to a single perfect strike as countless beams of light slice through the air with the full power of the technique. Suddenly, the masked leader is the one coughing up blood after taking a direct blow to the chest. Jin Sowoon's counterattack is so fast that it completely overwhelms the leader's offense in an instant. He lands calmly with his sword in hand as every enemy collapses in defeat. Lying on the ground, the leader cannot understand how he was defeated so easily. He is stunned that the Namong clan's greatest secret technique and source of pride has been completely broken by a stranger. Jin Sowoon mocks his disbelief, explaining that the Namong clan is unaware of a hidden formula created specifically to counter its own sword technique. With the battle over, he sheathes his sword and quietly returns to the small cabin beneath the night sky. Opening the wooden door without making a sound, he ensures no one nearby notices his return. Now that the danger has passed, Jin Sowoon begins preparing the treatment he promised. Standing beside the unconscious Wang Sosa, he starts the medical procedure to change her constitution and save her. The cabin remains silent as the treatment continues through the night while the forest stays calm around them. By sunrise, daylight fills the area, marking the beginning of a new morning after the long night. When Wang Soso regains consciousness, she shyly adjusts her clothes before making an important request. Blushing deeply, she asks if she may affectionately call Jin Sowoon her big brother from now on. Sowoon listens to her sincere request in silence. Touched by the affection and trust she shows him, he watches as she waits for his answer with her heart pounding and her head lowered shyly. Laughing happily, Sowoon accepts. Overjoyed, Suso asks him to call her by her nickname as well. With a warm smile, the young man agrees, calling her Suso and holding out his hand so they can walk together. He raises his hand as if to pat her head but suddenly freezes when he remembers that Hong always hated having her hair messed with. He apologizes, saying it is an old habit. Suso blushes and shyly whispers that she does not mind his affection at all. Looking up at the clear sky, Sowoon reminds her that her father must be frantically waiting for her. The two walk side by side along a beautiful path lined with blooming trees as pink petals fall around them. Delighted, Suso watches the blossoms and speaks emotionally about experiencing spring for the very first time. Because she lived sealed away in a frozen room, she only knew spring flowers through stories. She excitedly adds that she also wants to hike through the mountains during autumn. Sowoon tells her that she will need to train. Scenery of rivers and waterfalls shows the natural wonders of the outside world that she can now explore. Proudly declaring that she is a Thai disciple, Suso promises to train hard so she can enjoy summer in the future. Finally, they arrive at the bustling Wungklin village where residents fill the streets. Suso excitedly points toward the mansion's large sign displaying her father's name at the entrance. She grabs Sowoon's hand and eagerly pulls him along. Excited to reunite with her father and introduce her hero, she happily assures Sowoon that her father will host a massive feast and give him a huge reward. She celebrates the fact that leaders from all the branch families will attend, with plenty of food and non-stop music. However, Jainoon gently releases her hand and stops running. Sowoon smiles and tells her that he will say goodbye here because he will not be entering the Wung estate for the feast. The scene shifts to the Namong clan where a heated argument fills the room. Strategist Judge Somayang calmly drinks his tea, ignoring the young warrior standing before him. Namong-san raises his voice and demands that the promised special admission pass be given to his brother. He argues that his brother possesses peerless talent among the new generation and demands an answer from the strategist. The strategist calmly replies that if he is truly that talented, he should have no trouble passing the regular exam. Nam Gong clenches his fist and angrily asks whether the old man knows the terrible reputation of the regular exam. Tens of thousands of young people from across the entire continent register for the competition hoping to pass, yet only 500 manage to survive the brutal test. The ruthless examination eliminates the vast majority of its participants, becoming known throughout the martial world as the Hell Exam. The strategist explains that he gave the pass to someone more talented, but Namong-san refuses to accept it. Outraged, the young warrior insists that the chief strategist must have made a regrettable mistake. So Mayong precisely sets his cup down on the table. His aura suddenly turns cold as he stares at the young man and asks whether he truly believes the strategist owes him explanations or justifications for his orders. Overwhelmed by the old man's authority, Namong-san immediately swallows his pride and apologizes. So Mayong pours himself more tea and calmly remarks that his family's political situation is getting worse. He sarcastically points out how ridiculous it is for a direct descendant of the powerful Nam clan to fear an exam. The Nam clan strictly divides its power, with the direct heirs maintaining the family's martial traditions, while the secondary branch manages its finances and commercial empire outside the gates. The secondary branch created the Blue Sky Merchant Guild, accumulating enormous wealth and political influence. As the guild expanded, the secondary branch became powerful enough to challenge the direct heirs. Despite the crimes committed by the guild, the direct descendants cannot easily intervene. The young man asks whether the strategist has a solution, revealing that the clan leader is searching for a way out. So Mayong's eyes widen when he learns that the patriarch is developing the sword breaker technique. The old man slams his fist onto the table in outrage, warning that creating a counterattack against their own clan's swordsmanship is insane. He reminds him that the sword technique also belongs to the main family and that using it will destroy everyone. The tea spilled across the wooden table reflects the self-destructive conflict brewing between the two branches. Namong-san grips his knee and pleads that he needs the pass to save the main family's future. Leaning forward, he begs to know who received the direct entry spot. The strategist remains silent, thinking of the young Jin Sowoon who has just received the recommendation. Back in the village, Wang Soso is heartbroken upon hearing So-won say that their journey together ends here. The girl tries to reason with him, laying out arguments for why they should enter her father's mansion together. So-won explains that her disappearance has caused chaos, and arriving with her would only make people suspicious of him. She desperately clutches his clothes, promising that nothing bad will happen and begging him not to leave. With tears in her eyes, she begs for a chance to repay him for saving her life. So-won gently pats Suso's head and reminds her that she herself claimed to be a Taya disciple. With a sweet smile, he says the only reward he needs is gaining a new sect sister. As he turns away, he reinforces his medical advice, reminding her never to forget her daily medicine. Waving happily, the young man wishes her a long life filled with health and happiness. The villagers in the street stare at the girl, recognizing the lost heir of the Wang clan. Shock spreads through the market as people begin shouting in surprise at the sight of her alive at the entrance. As the crowd announces her return, Suso watches her savior's silhouette disappear into the distance. Jin Sowoon walks peacefully with his hands behind his head, satisfied that he has saved an innocent life. The scene returns to the Namong clan, where the internal power struggle between the branches continues to rage. Namong-san insists on knowing who the strategist gave the second direct spot for the academy to, but So Mayong keeps the answer secret, never revealing that the token ended up in the hands of a simple Taya boy walking through the village. Meanwhile, So-won reflects on how his original plan went wrong and how he could no longer claim the direct reward. Unpredictable variables had appeared, including Suso's solar physique, which forced him to alter her physical constitution. In the worst-case scenario, the Wang clan might suspect that he orchestrated the kidnapping himself just to play the hero. That is why he decides the best choice is to decline any reward and let her father seek him out of gratitude. He calmly reasons that if her father is an honorable man, he will personally come to thank the Taya sect. The young man then makes a comically terrified expression at the thought that the man might simply do nothing at all, before reminding himself that saving a life is reward enough. So one reaches the gate and sees Hong arguing with Namong-san in the courtyard. Namong-san asks for a moment of his time while Hong furiously demands that the man leave the sect immediately. Seeing the scene, So one Won smirks mockingly and teases that his younger sister is already old enough to get a boyfriend. A hand suddenly appears and blocks Hong's path, startling the young girl in the sect courtyard. Namong-san firmly states that he has no intention of leaving and will stay the night if necessary. Watching from afar, Jin Sowoon narrows his eyes, annoyed by the nerve of the Namong clan heir. Taking a decisive step forward, Sowon intervenes and tells the visitor to stop bothering her. The boy glares at his rival and warns him that if the girl has already said no, he needs to stop pushing her immediately. The Namong warrior looks down at Sowon with disdain, sizing up the young man standing before him. Namong-san then smiles and says that Sowon has arrived at the perfect time. Recognizing his true identity, he addresses him by name and introduces himself as Namong-san, the divine dragon and direct heir of the Namong clan. Hong mentions that he has spent the entire day looking for him. Sowon finds this unprecedented event in the timeline strange. He considers whether the visit could be related to Wang Suso's rescue but dismisses the possibility, since that matter concerns the secondary branch. He knows that someone from the main family would never act on behalf of the secondary branch's henchmen or interests. This visit never happened in his past life, meaning it was caused by a change in this new timeline. So one smiles when he realizes the only variable capable of creating such an unexpected encounter. Namong-san approaches him and says he has an extremely important matter to discuss with him. The heir arrogantly demands that they prepare a guest room and tea so they can begin their conversation. Ignoring the snobbish request, Sowon simply turns around and says he is going to greet the sect leader first. Waving nonchalantly, he tells the noble to wait in the courtyard since they never scheduled an appointment. Hong stands speechless at her brother's nerve as he openly mocks the arrogance of the Namong clan heir. Namong-san, meanwhile, is consumed by anger at being treated with such contempt by an ordinary disciple. The scene shifts to the main hall of the Taya sect where the masters are conversing peacefully. Jin Ta-zan and leader Hong Chok nearly spill their tea when they see Sowon walk in and bow politely. Jin Sowoon performs a flawless formal greeting, announcing his official return before the Taya leadership. His father immediately jumps from his chair suspiciously and asks since when his son suddenly learned good manners. Hong Mongji warmly welcomes him, and so one pulls up a chair to sit at the table with the sect elders. The leader calms Jin Taizan and greets the boy, saying it has been a while since they have enjoyed tea together in peace. As he pours the tea, the leader asks Sowon to share everything that happened during his time away from the sect. Sowon explains that he saved a kidnapped girl and had to teach her the Taya cultivation method to save her life. He apologizes for passing on the secret art without permission and predicts that the girl's father will arrive soon. Understanding the situation, the leader forgives him, stating that martial arts exist precisely to save lives. Hong Mji and Jin Tasa smile proudly, declaring that they are extremely happy with his noble action. Jin Sowoon offers a genuine smile, touched by the approval and unconditional support of his Taya family. Jin Ta-sa asks about a cash reward, prompting Sowon to tease his father for being greedy and self-serving. After finishing his tea, the boy stands and says he has a pending matter to handle within the sect. He politely takes his leave from the masters, revealing that an important visitor is waiting for him outside. The leader praises the young man's maturity, while Jin Teen tries to act modest with a silly grin. Suddenly, both stop laughing and stare at each other in shock, wondering who this mysterious guest could be. In the courtyard, the young disciples peek through the window in awe, admiring the famous divine dragon of the Namong family. The children praise his imposing presence and wish they had been born into such a noble clan. They dream of learning Namong swordsmanship, remembering that only the top prodigies are admitted to their academy. Jin Sowoon enters the room, sits at the table, and calmly drinks his tea while staring Nam Gong-san directly in the eyes without hesitation. Nam Gong-san grows irritated by the boy's relaxed posture, remembering how everyone normally bows before him. He reflects that mediocre individuals sometimes show their claws toward the strong because of an inferiority complex. Getting straight to the point, Jin Sowoon asks whether his visit is about the Merm Academy entry pass. Namong-san freezes in shock, surprised that the boy has guessed the exact reason for his presence. Regaining his composure, the heir sets his cup on the table and explains that the entry spot actually belongs to him. He claims that he asked the strategist for the pass first first and that the token ended up in Sound's hands purely by chance. Sound sarcastically asks why the old man would give the pass to someone else and tells him to complain directly to the person who gave it to him. Laughing, the boy exposes the truth, saying that Namong-san came to pressure the Taya sect because the strategist rejected him and trampled on his pride. Namong-san admits that the boy has an irritating talent for getting under people's skin, so one waves playfully and says that if he is speaking the truth, then his irritation is his own problem as he stares down the powerful divine dragon. The reason the Namong clan heir is so determined to obtain the entry pass is to give the spot to his younger sister, who will enter the academy this year. Attempting to negotiate, he places the 7-color treasure pearl on the table, claiming that it is valuable enough to purchase a massive estate. Seeing its glow, Sound recognizes his rival's desperation. Knowing that he cannot rely on the full support of a clan weakened by internal conflict, Nam Gong-san claims that he intended to resolve everything peacefully for the Taya's sake, but this hypocritical attitude only irritates the boy further. The way the man cares so deeply about his own family while looking down on others disgusts the young protagonist. He recalls his brutal past when blood covered the ground and thinks he would rather have his own chest torn open than listen to someone complain over trivial matters. With a dark expression filled with restrained anger, Sound makes it clear that he will not tolerate the noble's arrogant and self-pitying attitude. The visitor then tries to intimidate him, asking what the martial world would say if they learned that the Taya sect coveted something from the Namong clan. Without showing the slightest fear, Sound responds with a challenging smile and tells the arrogant heir to go ahead and try to tarnish their name. Angered by the boy's nerve, the noble asks whether he is truly refusing and whether the Taya sect can handle the consequences of opposing the great Namong clan. With a mocking smile, Sound tells him to think carefully, reminding him that the Iron Sword sect once tried to stand against him as well. He openly mocks his rival by pointing out that the Iron Sword sect ended up completely humiliated and destroyed by his hands. The warrior's rage immediately explodes at the provocation. He indignantly demands how the boy dares compare his noble clan to a low-class sect. Namong-san's expression turns completely dark, filled with the intent to harm, as he realizes that this mere disciple is underestimating his clan. Tension fills the entire room as the two glare intensely at each other, threatening to shatter the peaceful atmosphere of their conversation. Namong-san tightly clenches his fist and decides to settle the dispute once and for all. Since the boy is so confident in his words, the heir furiously stands and challenges Sound to a duel, putting the academy entry pass on the line. Remaining calm with a sharp gaze, Sound accepts without hesitation, showing that he has expected this proposal from the beginning. News of the duel quickly spreads throughout the courtyard and chatter fills the surroundings of the Taya sect. Upon hearing the unbelievable news, the masters and elders are left completely speechless by the mess Jin Sowoon has created. A crowd of curious disciples rushes toward the courtyard arena, eager to witness the historic fight between the two young masters. Panic grips the elders as the excited students shout that Sound is going to face the legendary divine dragon of the Namong clan. The pink-haired girl is horrified, unable to understand what kind of madness her older brother is committing by challenging a genius of that caliber. The master of the outer pavilion approaches, surprised by the commotion, and discovers that Sound and the distinguished visitor have made an agreement to fight. The young mentor explains that the tension between the two has been high from the beginning, but no one expected the dispute to escalate into a duel so quickly. The sect's children begin passionately cheering for Sound, showing complete trust in the prodigy's abilities. One student tries to bring everyone back to reality, reminding them that their opponent is none other than the famous hero of the great Namong clan. The younger disciples immediately fire back, reminding him that Sound already defeated senior brother Jai and even the feared blood wolf of the Iron Sword sect. Swept up in their contagious enthusiasm, the children cheer with clenched fists, confidently declaring that Sound will emerge victorious once again while the elders silently watch in concern. The sect members shout loudly, urging Sound to give the fight his absolute best. Jin watches apprehensively, acknowledging his son's monstrous progress. However, knowing that the Taya sect's arts can hardly surpass those of the Namong clan, everyone remains tense as the two warriors take their positions at the center of the arena under the watchful eyes of the crowd. The masters wonder what is going through Sound's mind. Before the fight begins, Sound demands confirmation of the wager. He risks the academy entry spot while the noble puts up the pearl, the silk, and the clan's divine pill. Namong San accepts the conditions, promising to use only the blue sky sword art while limiting his internal energy to just 30%. The heir draws his blade and warns that even with these restrictions, he will not hold back the power behind his strikes. So one grips the hilt of his sword and signals for the fight to begin, maintaining a firm stance against his opponent's intimidating presence. The entire audience falls completely silent. The onlookers swallow hard, gripped by suffocating tension as the blades are about to cross. In a fast, nearly imperceptible motion, one of them charges forward, tearing up the ground and opening the confrontation with an impressive burst of speed. The two swords collide with unbelievable force, producing sparks and a shock wave that echoes throughout the Taya sect courtyard. Upon impact, Nam Gong San is instantly shocked by the overwhelming pressure of the strike. Realizing at that exact moment that something is wrong, the two warriors exchange swift attacks without giving an inch, creating a storm of energy slashes that cuts through the air around the battlefield. So one takes advantage of the opening to mock him, sarcastically pointing out the noble's shocked expression at realizing the fight is not going as planned. The battle quickly turns wild, with the blades colliding fiercely and sparks flying in every direction in a surreal display of swordsmanship. Nam Gong San struggles to block each attack, wondering how the young boy can possibly be this strong. So one pivots and delivers a brutal sword strike, leaving the air stunned by the sheer weight behind the blade of someone who has not even reached adulthood. The noble withstands the impact through gritted teeth, unable to understand where such tremendous force is coming from. Without giving his opponent time to breathe, So one seamlessly combines another physical movement with his swordsmanship and charges forward with full force, disrupting his rival's defense. Nam Gong San groans in pain as the continuous pressure drives him backward through the intense exchange. Regaining his stance, the noble acknowledges that the boy's achievements are impressive but warns with wounded pride that his luck has run out. Executing the legendary blue sky sword technique, the noble launches a swift attack and declares that miracles do not happen twice. So one moves with impressive agility and dodges the attack. Keeping his eyes sharply focused on his opponent, he analyzes the trajectory of the enemy's blade without showing the slightest fear or hesitation. The blue aura surrounding Nam Gong San's sword shines ominously through the air as the secret technique illuminates the entire battlefield. Their blades clash again with incredible force, creating a storm of sparks and shock waves throughout the sect courtyard. The brutal impact sends energy spilling outward, producing extremely sharp gusts of wind that fly in every direction. The two warriors continue exchanging fierce strikes at the center of the arena, displaying an unbelievable balance of strength that leaves everyone impressed. Outraged that his technique has been blocked, the noble fumes and demands to know what trick a mere disciple of a minor sect used to stop him. So one immediately counters, mockingly asking whether his rival plans to use the same lame excuses as his previous opponents. The boy openly asks whether the heir is incapable of accepting that the Taya sect has warriors equal to those of the Namong clan. Gripping his sword tightly, the visitor apologizes for offending the sect but makes it clear that he cannot accept the idea of being surpassed. Driven by wounded pride, the noble charges furiously, declaring that the Namong clan's defeat is impossible in the martial world. The masters and disciples panic as they feel the noble's hostile intent spreading through the courtyard with overwhelming pressure. At the mention of hostile intent, painful memories from Sound's past life violently resurface. He remembers the dark, bloody days when he lay exhausted on the ground beneath heavy rain, surrounded by bodies and pain. Heavy footsteps echo through the bloody mud as enemies advance mercilessly, determined to eliminate every survivor of the battle. As the young man lies helpless in the mud, an enemy raises a sharp sword, preparing to deliver the final blow to his weakened body. That tragedy took place when the Murim alliance suffered consecutive, crushing defeats against the advance of the terrible demonic sect. His squad served merely as disposable human shields made up of outcasts and forgotten people. That tragic group, abandoned to its fate on the battlefield, is known to everyone as the Lesser Justice Squad. Sound's great secret is that in his past life, he is the captain tasked with leading that group of unfortunates. He lives through the true horror of direct combat, where every second determines who survives and who is torn apart by enemy blades. Physical pain, exhaustion, and constant despair become part of his daily routine. As he watches his comrades fall around him, the blood of his allies splatters through the air. The captain fights like a madman, desperately trying to save the lives of those who trust him. Shouting in agony and coughing up blood, he watches the massacre helplessly, unable to stop death from taking his closest friends. Kneeling beside their corpses in the middle of the storm, the young man carries the crushing guilt of failing to protect his soldiers. He knows that if he does not raise his sword and fight with absolute fury, his comrades will be brutally executed on the ground, even while injured and at the limits of exhaustion. He faces his enemies with bloodshot eyes, turning his fear into combat strength as he grips the hilt of his blood-covered blade. He refuses to fall as long as a single breath remains in his chest. For that reason, he always puts his own life on the line at the front, leading charges through that hell of pain. The bloodlust, constant terror, and overwhelming fear he feels back then become permanently engraved into the essence of his soul. Returning to the present, the heir brings down a devastating sword strike, determined to end the duel and prove the supremacy of his clan. The sharp blade passes mere millimeters from Sound's face, while the wind generated by the attack cuts through the air with terrifying force. Using all the suffering of his past as fuel, the boy plants his foot firmly into the ground, cracking the dirt as he launches himself into a counterattack. He vows that in this new life, history will not repeat itself because now he has a real family and comrades. With a wild smile and blood trickling down his cheek, Sound faces the enemy blade head-on. Without hesitating for a second, the two warriors cross paths in midair in a decisive clash, bringing their weapons together with the full power of their legendary martial arts. With unwavering determination in his eyes, Sound reaffirms his promise to protect everyone he loves with his own hands. A colossal explosion of dust and debris erupts in the center of the arena, startling all the disciples watching the fight closely. The curtain of smoke slowly begins to clear, revealing the unbelievable outcome of the fierce confrontation between the two prodigies. The entire audience watches in complete shock and silence. Unable to believe the surreal conclusion of the wild battle, Sound lies on his back on the destroyed arena floor, completely exhausted after the intense exchange of blows in midair. Looking up at the open sky, the boy takes a deep breath to catch his breath before cracking a light smile on his dirty, bruised face. With blood running from the corner of his mouth, Sound teases his rival, asking if the great hero did not promise to use only one sword technique. Nam Gong San remains frozen in the stance of the Imperial Emperor sword technique, the supreme martial art of the Namong clan. The onlookers realize that the noble has broken his promise by using another technique, understanding that he was forced to resort to it to avoid defeat. Realizing the foolish mistake he made out of pure impulse, Nam Gong San stands in complete silence. Unsure how to react in front of everyone, the heir sighs and gives a resigned smile, inwardly acknowledging that he has been outmatched by the Taya boy's cleverness and power. Admitting defeat, the heir openly declares that he has lost the dispute and confirms that he will hand over the entry pass to the winner. The Taya disciples erupt in complete euphoria, wildly celebrating their historic victory over the representative of the Namong clan. Instantly regaining his energy, Sound gets up laughing and reminds the noble to hand over the silk, the vitality pill, and the precious pearl. Laughing greedily, Sound celebrates the fact that he used the entry spot as bait to score priceless treasures like the noble's pill and rare silk. As he thinks about how to sell the rewards, the boy is surprised when his rival warns him that the sparring match is not over yet. Completely confused by the unexpected statement, Sound stares at his opponent. Having no idea what he intends to do, Nam Gong points his sword at him and acknowledges that the protagonist is no ordinary man and that his earlier defeat was no mere coincidence. The noble states that the outcome of the wager has already been settled, but the conclusion of the sparring match is a completely separate matter. With an arrogant smile, the rival tells the boy to take a combat stance, leaving Sound stunned by his persistence. Without giving the boy time to process what is happening, the noble charges forward with a brutal sword attack that tears through the air with extreme force. In the courtyard, Sound leaps backward to dodge the strike which destroys the ground where he stood. Noticing the renewed rage in his opponent's movements, the boy continues dodging the onslaught while complaining about his rival's meaningless stubbornness. He even offers to pretend that he lost the fight just to make him stop. The noble rejects the offer, stating with a serious gaze that he needs no favors and that true victories are earned through skill. Launching another fierce attack, he declares that victory must be taken through one's own power. As Sound struggles to block the strike and absorbs the impact with difficulty, he realizes that his rival's sword has changed, becoming much heavier than before. He understands that just as he once fought desperately for his comrades in the past, the noble now carries the weight of his clan's pride. Unable to let the Namong name be tarnished, the heir pours all his desperation into his blade, determined to win at any cost. Their swords clash again, sending intense sparks through the air as the pressure of the duel increases with every passing second. The two exchange swift attacks in midair, displaying a terrifying determination to give each other no ground. The noble is surprised by the boy's resilience and questions how he can block the blue sky sword while struggling against the Imperial King. Sound complains about the constant chatter while defending himself, remembering that even the records from his past life contained no information about this secret art. The Namong clan had never revealed any details about the technique, making it impossible to create a formula to counter it without knowing how to defend against the supreme art. The fight becomes increasingly dangerous for the protagonist. Sound is violently hurled backward, dragging his feet across the ground as his father and the sect elders call out his name in concern. Seeing the danger, Sound's father demands that he stop the duel. He warns that Sound has already gotten what he wanted and could end up seriously injured. He realizes in panic that his rival has released all of his internal energy without restriction in an attempt to dominate the sparring match. Leaning on his sword, Sound pants heavily from exhaustion while staring at his opponent in the middle of the sect's destroyed arena. The boy is impressed to see the arrogant noble using his full strength against someone he previously looked down on so much. Although Sound hates people who walk around with an overbearing sense of pride, he acknowledges that his rival's dedication deserves respect. Thinking about the great factions of the martial world, he recognizes the effort the heir is making to protect his clan's honor. Even while despising the arrogance of nobles, Sound admits that his opponent's determination to give everything he has is impressive. The pink-haired girl clasps her hands together in prayer, her heart in her throat as she fears her older brother might be seriously injured. Wiping the blood from his mouth, Sound gives a sly smile, showing that he still has plenty of strength left to continue. Raising his sharp gaze, the protagonist tells himself that he cannot afford to lose this duel under any circumstances. He carries the pride of being a disciple of the Taya sect. Using that conviction to remain standing in the center of the arena, he senses the shift in his opponent's attitude. The noble watches him with renewed attention, noticing that the boy's determination remains completely unshaken. Observing Sound's firm stance, the visitor suspects that the Taya disciple is still hiding his true potential. He remembers that blocking the blue sky technique is not something an ordinary warrior could accomplish without extreme preparation. Furthermore, destroying the Iron Sword sect could not have been mere coincidence, proving that the protagonist is hiding deep secret. Still, the noble declares that he will surpass the boy with the imperial technique and tells his rival to attack. Sound accepts the challenge with a subtle smile as the heir prepares for his final surge, maintaining a solid stance with his sharp sword pointed straight ahead. Namong San charges forward at insane speed and warns the boy not to blame him if he dies from the devastating blow. Sound knows there is no ready-made formula capable of breaking the imperial art, but he decides to trust his perception and search for an opening. He perfectly remembers the starting stance of the attack he just witnessed. Using that memory to calculate the precise timing, Sound reads the movement at the exact moment of impact. The noble's eyes widen in absolute shock when he realizes the boy has managed to predict his attack. Capitalizing on the opening, Sound executes the lesser sky sword technique and delivers a lightning-fast counterattack. Surprised, the noble clicks his tongue when he sees that the boy has countered with his blade through that brief opening without losing momentum. The rival quickly spins his body to readjust his attack and continues the violent exchange of strikes across the arena. Their swords clash brutally again, creating a gigantic shock wave that scatters sharp energy around them. The noble's feet move rapidly across the ground as he maintains constant pressure on the Taya protagonist's defense. Shouting in fury, the heir pours every last drop of his energy into the attack, determined to crush the boy's resistance once and for all. Soun absorbs the impact with trembling hands beneath the crushing pressure of his rival's blade, which tries to force him down at all costs. Gritting his teeth, the boy withstands the onslaught with unwavering determination, refusing to lose the duel. Hearing the voices of his companions in the background, Soun reacts with surprise at the unconditional support of the sect's children. In the courtyard, the disciples watch apprehensively as the intense exchange unfolds, cheering with all their strength for their senior brother's victory. The children shout for Soun to demonstrate the true power and strength of the Taya sect on the battlefield. At the center of the courtyard, the two warriors remain locked in a clash of blades while the young disciples' cheers echo around them. Hearing the encouraging voices of his Taya family, a confident smile appears on Soun's face. In the middle of the intense struggle, Namong San's eyes widen in shock as he notices a sudden shift in the energy surrounding the boy's sword while Soun charges forward without hesitation. So one gathers momentum and surges forward to deliver a decisive strike. Wanting to show his juniors what the Taya sect is capable of, he leaves the children watching in awe. The boy proves that one does not need to be born into a noble clan or possess supreme techniques to become strong. Using only the Taya sect's lesser sky sword technique, he reaches an extraordinary level of power in battle with a brilliant charge. So one proves to everyone that anyone can become strong enough to face the great legends of the world. The impact shatters the air around them, reflected in the stunned faces of the young girl and the sect leader, who cannot believe what they are seeing. Amid the fragments flying across the courtyard, one's sharp gaze remains focused as he pours all his strength into the final movement. The shards of light reveal the Namong clan heir desperately trying to defend against the perfect blade closing in on him with absolute focus. Soon completes his sword's path, cutting through his opponent's defense. At the final split second, blood sprays into the air, marking the exact moment the protagonist's swift attack strikes the noble rival. The shadows of the two combatants remain on the floor of the destroyed arena as absolute silence washes over the entire set. The pink-haired girl stands completely speechless, covering her mouth in shock. Upon witnessing the unbelievable outcome, Nam Gong remains motionless with wide eyes, paralyzed by the shock of being surpassed so cleanly and directly. Soun appears behind his rival, his sharp blade resting against the neck of the famous Namong clan hero, a victorious smile on his face as his opponent's blood trickles down. So one mockingly asks the noble if he intends to continue. With blood running down his neck, Nam Gong stands in utter shock, silently accepting that he has been completely defeated in the arena. Firm footsteps echo through the courtyard as someone slowly approaches the spot where the tense showdown has just ended. The battle finally comes to a close when the sword hits the ground with a loud metallic clatter. Soun stares at his opponent, who remains completely shocked by everything that has happened. So one flashes a confident smirk and whispers that this is only the beginning of an unbelievable display of strength for everyone present. He then starts laughing nervously as an overwhelming surge of pain shoots through his injured hand. He realizes that he nearly lost the limb by pouring all of his inner energy into that single attack. The youngest disciples of the sect begin shouting with pure joy, celebrating their older brother's epic victory. While someone desperately calls for a doctor, the children rush over to give him a big hug. Soun hurriedly tells them to stay back because of the blood and insists that they call the sect doctor immediately. The elders watch the scene with expressions of complete shock and concern. Unable to believe the level of recklessness and danger the young man took on during the duel, the sect leader watches the end of the fight with relief, though he remains deeply worried about the severity of the injury to the young protagonist's hand. Soun smiles happily while soaking in the affection from all his younger companions, forgetting for a moment about the terrible pain he is feeling. Nam Gungan remains completely silent with his head lowered and a deeply thoughtful expression, reflecting on the surprising defeat he has just suffered in the arena. A furious shout echoes from inside the main temple, demanding to know whether the protagonist has completely lost his mind by taking such a dangerous risk. During the fight, his younger sister had already yelled at Soun in frustration, calling him crazy for grabbing a sharp blade with his bare hands. As he awkwardly tries to calm her down, she points at his heavily bandaged arm and scolds him, saying his hand could have been severed if his opponent had been at full strength at that moment. The other members of the sect also begin shouting, accusing the young man of being far too irresponsible and demanding to know the doctor's exact diagnosis. So one tries to reassure everyone with an embarrassed smile, while the doctor in the background gives a serious warning that he narrowly avoided permanent bone damage. The girl completely loses her patience with his carelessness and punches the protagonist directly in the face, shouting that the injury was nothing minor like he claimed. So one falls to the ground in pain, complaining about her sudden aggression. The other leaders simply watch the scene without doing anything to stand up for him as he remains sprawled on the floor of the room. The protagonist hears the steady sound of dripping water and realizes that the atmosphere in the room has suddenly shifted. The young girl holds back her tears and threatens to cut off his hand with her own sword if he ever dares to attempt another reckless stunt like that again. So one is surprised by her genuine concern and tenderly asks her not to cry, sincerely promising that he will be much more careful from now on. The sect leader slowly walks toward Soun with a calm expression and calls him by name. As the girl steps back slightly, still pouting from the argument, he gently holds the protagonist's bandaged hand and asks with a sad expression why he decided to go so far and take such a reckless risk. So one shifts his gaze slightly and begins explaining his reasons in a calm tone, revealing what was truly going through his mind when he made that dangerous move. He reveals that his opponent had no manners and had disrespectfully ignored the sect by failing to properly greet the leader. On top of that, the intruder had been extremely rude to his beloved younger sister. In a firm tone, he states that he simply wanted to teach the arrogant intruder a proper lesson, leaving the two elders completely stunned by the young man's sheer boldness. The blue sky filled with white clouds stretches above the sect, symbolizing that the storm of the confrontation has finally passed and giving everyone a moment of quiet reflection. Outside, Nam Gong walks slowly across the stone courtyard with heavy, thoughtful steps, moving away from the place where he suffered his major defeat. Suddenly, the silence is broken by a furious shout from inside the temple, calling the protagonist a complete fool and startling the young clan warrior. The elder continues yelling at Soun, asking what foolish reason made him keep fighting when he had already secured victory in the wager against the imperial technique. With striking seriousness in his eyes, the protagonist firmly answers that he chose to keep fighting simply because all the younger disciples were watching. The man is left completely speechless, staring wide-eyed at the young fellow as he processes the deep and meaningful response. Soun explains that even if he lost a finger, the children saw the sect's sword pointed at the hero's neck and understood that their martial arts still had real potential. Instead of feeling envious and wishing they had been born into a powerful clan, the youngsters would now have an entirely new perspective on their own training. On the courtyard floor, the broken pieces of the practice sword glisten, reflecting the strong resolve of the young disciples who now view those ruins with fresh eyes. The young man adds that they will now truly believe their own sect sword can defeat even a famous noble clan, inspiring them to keep moving forward. The elder looks away and dismisses it as complete nonsense, claiming that the children were probably terrified after watching his finger nearly get sliced off. So one smiles warmly and says that if even one disciple out of 100 truly understands the way and heart of the sect, then losing a finger will have been a remarkably small price to pay. The old man grumbles in annoyance, calling those words meaningless foolishness as he turns his back and walks away, trying to hide the overwhelming emotion rising in his chest. With a flushed face and tearful eyes, the man mutters to himself that Soun is still nothing more than a naive and incredibly stubborn kid. As he opens the door to leave the room, the elder runs directly into Nam Gong, who is standing patiently in the hallway. Completely caught off guard by the young noble's presence, the old man stares at him in panic, embarrassed to be caught crying as he hurriedly wipes away his tears. He then runs off while shouting in frustration, leaving the young clan warrior completely confused and unable to understand the elder's dramatic reaction. The sect leader appears moments later, offering the visitor a warm smile and politely welcoming him into the room for a calm conversation. The blue-haired young man takes a firm step inside, moving with elegance and respect. As he prepares to face the protagonist once again, he offers a formal bow with his hands joined, showing that he has learned to respect the sect and its members after the intense duel he experienced there. Soun observes this newfound respectful attitude with a calm gaze, assessing the demeanor of his former opponent, who now carries himself with genuine dignity. The leader gives an understanding smile and announces that he will leave the matter for the young men to resolve privately. He politely asks everyone else to step outside and give them some space. The sunset sky turns shades of orange and gold, marking the end of a day filled with intense moments and setting the stage for a new understanding between the two warriors. Seated across from each other at a wooden table, the noble presents the valuable items he promised as payment for the wager, honoring his word with sincerity and respect. He then looks at the protagonist with curiosity and asks what made him risk his own life and suffer such a serious injury during the duel. Nam Gong solemnly states that losing to his clan should never bring shame to anyone, given the way things work in the martial world. He adds that losing to the Taya sect carries no dishonor either, but questions whether the warriors there truly live up to those noble words. With a focused gaze, Soun asks what he truly considers shameful and whether he is simply judging the world based on famous names and raw strength. The young heir's eyes widen at the question, feeling his own core beliefs shake under the weight of the truth he has just heard. The protagonist's shadow falls across the wall as he reflects on what would happen if the clan's famous secret techniques simply disappeared one day. So one firmly states that lacking powerful martial arts within a sect will never mean that the sect has no pride. Gazing at the precious pearl resting on the table, the visitor begins reflecting deeply on the valuable lesson he has just learned from his rival. Nam Gong agrees with the young man and admits that Soun put his hand on the line, a swordsman's most precious asset, proving that he possesses a pride even greater than his own. He looks up with genuine eyes and says that he hopes to earn the protagonist's forgiveness for all his previous rudeness and disrespect toward the Taya sect. The visitor offers a respectful bow, apologizing for the arrogant behavior he displayed earlier in front of the sect's young heir. So one flashes a genuine smile, recognizing that his opponent is humble enough to acknowledge his mistakes and apologize with real dignity. The young man laughs warmly, accepting the apology, and asks the other to forgive any disrespect he may have shown during their intense duel. Both young warriors bow to each other at the same time, exchanging a salute filled with mutual respect and permanently sealing the peace between their two sides. The sun slowly sets behind the mountains, bringing an intense day of battles to an end and making way for the night. Under the bright light of a full moon in the starry sky, a man's voice suddenly shouts in complete astonishment from inside the main temple after hearing an unexpected announcement. The elders are left utterly stunned while the sect leader calmly sips his tea after delivering shocking news that leaves everyone speechless. With impressive calm, the leader asks how they feel about finally making Soun the official chief disciple of the sect.